Yo Atlas speaking and welcome to part 2 of What If I Was Reincarnated into the MHA world and Awakened the Sharingan. Let the tale begin. Chapter 21 Second Day and Battle Trial. Kipyovi, I have gotten through the first day of school without a hitch. Today I arrived at school earlier than usual, because I thought that maybe I could work on my manga before class starts. I opened the door to my class and as expected it was empty. I also double-checked to see if other giant caterpillars were hiding in the room, but thankfully, no one was there. After I made sure that there was one here, I sat down with a satisfied smile. I also sent more shadow clones to explore the rest of the school. I still barely discover all the areas yet. It truly fills me with wonder on how massive UA truly was. While I was daydreaming and working on my manga, someone poked me on the shoulder. Good morning, Uchiha-san, the voice set close to my ear. Kaya. I snapped out of my daydreaming and screamed. I turned around and saw Ida standing behind me. I sighed with relief and calmed my troubled heart. I remembered that Ida usually arrives pretty early as well, so it was no surprise that he shouldn't be here. I relaxed before pouting. Ida-kun, you scared me. Why didn't you say anything? I did multiple times but you didn't respond. Ida explained apologetically. Speaking of which, what are you drawing, Uchiha-san? He asked. I quickly covered up what I was doing and said with an embarrassed tone. That is nothing. I muttered with a red face. Unfortunately, when I tried to hide my drawings, one piece of paper slipped onto the floor. Ida picked it up and stared at it. His eyes then turned very wide. Isn't this the newly popular manga? Kimetsu no Yaiba? I sighed. Do you like the manga? I asked out of curiosity. He excitedly nodded. Yes. I'm a big fan. The story was very cool, and it was something I have never seen before. I wish to meet the author of this manga one day. He exclaimed in admiration. Me too, that's why I'm drawing them after all. I lied. The drawings looked very good. You really have a talent, Uchiha-san. Ida praised. If I don't know any better, I would have thought that these were drawn by the real author. I blushed under his praise and snatched the paper out of his hands before stuffing everything into my bag. I hurriedly changed the subject. By the way, Ida-kun, why are you here so early? Because it's good to arrive early. How about you? He asked. Me? I wanted to fully explore the school since it's very big. I answered. Then what are you doing here? Ida questioned. I'm exploring the school right now, I responded and made another shadow clone to help him understand. Ida was surprised to see another me but soon understand how I can still stay here while exploring at the same time. He got curious about my quirk. By the way, do you have the same quirk as your brother? Ida-kun said. I nodded and activated my Sharingan and he looked at me in awe. We talked until class started. He was happy that he got somebody to talk to while I was happy that I dodged a bullet. Surprisingly, class in UA was pretty normal. The only thing that sticks out was that we were being taught by pro heroes. Currently, Present Mike was teaching us English, the subject pretty easy for me since like before I can remember anything when I use my Sharingan. I recalled back then when I tried to quickly flip through a textbook with my Sharingan as an experiment. It somehow worked but gave me a migraine from all the information coming through my brain. During lunch, Mina-chan, Ochako-chan, and I ate in the cafeteria. The food was simply amazing. The pro hero lunch rush was the chef and anything he made was delicious. This just made UA even better. After devouring the food, I spent the rest of my lunchtime walking from table to table and making new friends. It was fun talking to everyone since students at UA have very interesting personalities. I even met the big three. They were all pretty cool but their personality was a bit eccentric. 30 minutes later. There's more table than I anticipated. I thought while introducing myself to the last table in the cafeteria. I thought I did pretty well and returned to class with a smile. Right now it's the afternoon and the most exciting lesson will start soon. That lesson was the Fundamental Hero Studies. I can tell that my classmates were pretty hyped and the same thing could be said about me as I could barely control myself in my seat. If I was correct, he should be here right about. I am coming through the door like a normal person. All Might shouted and entered the room. Everyone instantly became thrilled. All Might explained that he would be in charge of Fundamental Hero Studies and this afternoon we will be doing combat training. He pressed a button on the teacher's desk and hidden shelves moved out of the walls. On the shelves were rows and rows of metal suitcases with large green neon numbers imprinted on them. All Might explained that the hero costumes that we personally designed and requested had been made before school started. He said that the number on the suitcases match our seat number, and we will be changing into our costumes for today's training. You may once again be wondering why I haven't said anything about my costume. 1. You never asked, and 2. I wanted it to be a surprise. Anyway, I happily took the case with my costumes inside and skipped to the changing room. Chapter 22 Combat Trial. 15 minutes later. I finished changing into my hero costume and walked to ground beta to meet up with All Might and the others. My hero costume consists of black pants with black and bluish armor to protect my thighs and shin guards all the way up to my knees. On my waist there's a belt that I can keep my shurikens, kunai and tanto. I also wore black long-sleeve clothes that reveal my stomach region with arm braces to protect my arms. A black mantle covers the rest of my upper body, and the end of the mantle has a design of blue flames. I also have a mask that covers the upper part of my face, only leaving my mouth exposed. Lastly, I wore a black straw hat on my head to obscure my face even more. /N. I tried to describe her costume to look like the Death Garen beta set from Monster Hunter World. The difference was that she wore an additional utility belt, no slinger tool, only her stomach region was exposed while other parts of her body were covered with clothing. Her mask covers both sides and there were no fox ears on top of her hat. By the time I arrived, some of my classmates were already finished changing and were patiently waiting. They were all wearing the same thing in the show and I couldn't contain the excitement in my heart. It's truly a whole different experience seeing them with my own eyes, rather than through a small screen. Ochako and Mina noticed my presence and they ran towards me. Wow, Kichan, you look so cool. Mina chirped while Ochako eagerly nodded. Mina-chan and Ochako-chan, your hero costumes also look awesome as well. I replied with a bright smile. I felt fuzzy inside knowing that they liked my costume. It took me a long time for me to design and multiple sketches were made before I finally decided on this one. We continued to praise and compare our outfits until All Might interrupted our conversation and told us to gather around. All Might explained that for this training, we will be split into 2 teams, heroes and villains. Each team will have 2 people. The villain team needed to protect a fake bomb inside an urban building, while the heroes needed to secure the bomb. Villain sides will win if the heroes were defeated and unable to fight, while the heroes will win if they secure the bomb or capture the villains. All Might pulled a raffle box out of nowhere and said that the team will be randomly chosen. He then started calling out names. Just like Kanon, Ochako-chan got paired up with Midoriya while the others were different from Kanon. These two are destined to be together, huh? I thought and glimpsed with a wry smile. Ochako seemed pretty happy to be teamed together with Midoriya, while the green boy was acting all flustered at her enthusiasm. While I was contemplating, All Might called out my name. Team D will be Kidachi-ha and Kyokujiro, he announced. Jiro-chan, let's do our best, okay? I smiled. Jiro smiled back, and we did a little fist bump for encouragement. When all our team has been decided, All Might somehow obtain 2 more raffle boxes. Seriously, where is he getting those? He then pulled out 2 balls, 1 black and 1 white. The first match will be Team D versus Team H. Team D will be the heroes and Team H will be the villains, he announced. Team H consists of Tenya Ida and Ijiro Kirishima. Both of them got decently strong quirks, so I have to be cautious while dealing with them. We were guided to a building. Team H first went in to prepare the defenses while Jiro and I have to wait outside. Both teams were given earpieces so we can communicate with our teammates or All Might if there was an emergency. Jiro-chan, I have a plan, I said, and she nodded. I briefly explained my quirk to her and told her about my plan. My plan was that first, she will use her quirk to tell me the locations of both Kirishima and Ida. I will then defeat one of them and together we will fight whoever remains. It's a very simple plan but pretty efficient. Let's go with your plan, she said with a thumbs up. Okay. Hero team may enter the building. Good luck, All Might said through the earpiece. We then enter the building. She sticks her earphone jack into the wall and told me that someone was patrolling the floor while the other one was sticking close to the bomb. I nodded and moved towards the one that was patrolling. Jiro-chan constantly give me updates on their whereabouts. I hid my presence and dashed to my target. Kirishima POV Tenya and I decided that I will patrol while he will defend as the hallways were pretty narrow, and it would be a disadvantage for him to fight there. The building was dark and I kept on guard around my surroundings. During the quirk apprehension test, Uchiha-chan got top scores for everything, so I knew that she was strong and I have to be very cautious. I moved to the third floor. It was dark with metal pipes all over the place. The floor felt extremely damp and a wet scent assaulted my nostril. The atmosphere was eerie and I subconsciously put my guard up. Have you found anything? Tenya asked. No, how about you? Negative, keep your guard up. I agreed and turned off the communication. Suddenly a dark figure appeared from the shadow and pounced. The figure lashed out with an insanely fast kick and I barely dodged thanks to my instinct. The enemy's foot shattered the wall behind me and I flinched in shock. However, right now wasn't the time to hesitate and immediately entered a boxing stance just as the figure attacked with a punch. I felt their fists striking my forearm and I grunted from the force. Fortunately, the strength was not enough and I immediately countered. I felt my punch landing on their stomach and they were sent flying across the room. The figure back hit the wall before collapsing. I nervously approached and I managed to have a more detailed look at my target. It was Uchiha. She seemed to be knocked unconscious and a small amount of guilt sprouts in my heart. Unfortunately, that feeling didn't last long when Uchiha burst into a cloud of smoke. I suddenly felt someone behind me, and when I turned my body, I was greeted by two bright red eyes staring into my soul. My body froze, the eyes terrified me and my mind went blank. Sleep. The figure muttered and everything went dark. Key POV. I stared at the sleeping Kirishima before me with satisfaction. I tied my classmate up with a rope and stole his earpiece. With some single hand signs, my body transformed into Kirishima, and I placed his earpiece into my ear. Kirishima, what's wrong? Answer me. Ida's agitated voice sounded through the earpiece. Everything's fine. I thought I saw something, but it was only a false alarm. I said in Kirishima's voice, I will be coming back since I can't find anyone. I suspect that they already know where the bomb was and will come to you soon. I see. Come back soon. He replied. I then quickly talked to Jiro through my own earpiece. Jiro-chan, I have taken care of Kirishima-kun. Please get in position and attack at my signal. Understood. She responded. I quickly went to where Ida was. I found him in a large vacant room where the bomb was placed at the center. There were also windows and crates around each of the corners. I spotted Jiro hiding behind some of the boxes. She somehow sneaked in and was waiting for my signal. Get ready, they will be coming here any second now. I said in Kirishima-kun's voice and I got closer to the bomb. Wait. Remember, we're supposed to have a code word. He answered suspiciously. What is it? I sighed. Ida-kun's too smart for his own good. Ida and I stared at each other before I yelled. Jiro-chan now. Hearing my signal, Jiro emerged from her hiding spot and fired two shock waves toward Ida. He was caught in the middle of the attack and rendered immobile. I used this opportunity and dashed towards him. I left my transformation jutsu and pinned him on the floor. Before he could struggle free, I sternly chopped the side of his neck and Ida went unconscious. Jiro and I smiled at each other and we celebrated with a high five. Together we placed our hands on the bomb. Team D wins. All Might be announced and some UA staff arrived and carried the unconscious Ida and Kirishima to the infirmary. We then went to meet up with the rest of our class. Midoriya POV, watching Uchiha easily taking care of Kirishima on the cameras, I felt uneasy. How is Yuki Haken this strong? What's her quirk? I asked. All Might paused before saying, from what I've heard from young Itachi, she has been training very hard for the last 8 years. Her quirks were also probably bloodline quirks as her parents have the same quirks as her. Bloodline quirks? Ajui, who was right next to me, asked. Bloodline quirks are special types of quirks. Usually when parents with quirks have children, their child's quirks will be something similar to both of the parents' quirks. However, bloodline quirks is a bit different. The parents' children will have the exact same quirks as their parents with bloodline quirks. These are all mere theories though, as they haven't been fully researched yet. All Might explained. Everyone in class nodded in understanding. I see. But it's still shocking to know that she already has been training for 8 years. Yaoyorozu muttered. All Might nodded to her statement and told us that we should have the same amount of dedication as Uchiha. That way we'll become very strong. Kipiovu, once Jiro and I returned, my classmates congratulated us on our victory. After that, just like canon, there's an intense match between Midoriya and Bakugo. It was very exciting to watch and Midoriya was sent to the infirmary. I can tell that everyone else was pretty hyped watching his battle against Bakugo. Other matches were pretty awesome as well as I got to see their quirks in action up close. After the trial we had a few more lessons and school finally ended. Then there was a whole moment with Midoriya and Bakugo at the entrance. Mina, Ochako, Azuri-chan, and I were watching by the window. What was that all about? Mina asked. It's a fated battle between men. Ochako-chan exclaimed. But it looks like Midoriya was just giving excuses one-sidedly, Azuri said. Fated battle between men. Ochako repeated. Chapter 23 Class Rep and Cafeteria Incident. Next day. Everything returned to normal. Not. For some reason, there were tons of reporters standing at the entrance of my school. They stopped me and started to send out volleys of questions about All Might and his relationship with Yue. Luckily I managed to escape thanks to body flicker jutsu, and safely entered the school grounds. I met up with Mina and Ochako. They also looked pretty ragged from all the reporters. Thankfully, they managed to regain their energy and together we walked toward our classroom. Hello Uchiha-san. Uchiha-san, how are you doing? Good morning Uchiha. People greeted me when walked down the hallway. I waved back at them with a bright smile. Hey everyone, let's once again do our best in school. I cheered. Ki-chan, I'm jealous of your confidence and social skills. To be able to make this many friends in this short amount of time is shocking. Ochako muttered. She's right, you know, it's absolutely abnormal. Mina complained. Hearing this, I have a smug smile for the rest of the walk to our class. Once in class, Aizawa-sensei commented on our performance yesterday in the combat trial. He then started talking about some homeroom business. Today we will be selecting a class representative, Aizawa-sensei announced. The entire class immediately turned to chaos. Everyone was shouting like crazy. Even Bakugo was screaming about becoming the class rep. Everyone please calm down. Ida yelled in a loud voice. Everyone soon returned to their senses and became embarrassed because of their behavior. There can only be one class rep. How about we do a vote? Ida suggested. But wouldn't we just vote for ourselves? Kirishima asked. But that means that someone with multiple votes was perfect to be the class rep. He explained. Because that person has earned the trust of another classmate. We all agreed to his suggestions and soon we wrote down the person's name we think it was best to be the class rep on a small piece of paper. The votes were then put in a box Yaoyorozu created and Ida started writing on the board the number of votes each person got. So our class rep will be Uchiha and the vice class rep will be me. He announced as he looked at the board. Eh? I yelled in shock. I glanced at the board and saw that I received a whopping 17 votes while Ida got 2 votes and of course Bakugo voted for himself. Why her? Bakugo shouted with a pissed-off expression. Well, Uchiha-san's really kind and she easily helps us get closer to each other on the first day, Azuri stated. Yeah, she even makes friends with most people in this school. Mina added while nodding. More and more people started praising me for why I deserve to be the class rep. Even Ida, who wanted to be the class rep the most, agreed with their reasoning. When I heard their opinions of me, my face blushed deeply and I felt I'm gonna cry. Thank you, I muttered shyly. I then slowly walked to the front of the classroom and said in a flustered tone, I, Kaede Uchiha, will accept the role of the class representative. Please take care of me. I bowed. Ida also did the same thing as me and the class, except Bakugo cheered. Shortly after that ordeal, everything came back to normal. During lunch I was eating with Ochako, Mina, Midoriya, Ida, Yaoyorozu and Azuri. We're enjoying the food while Ida talks about his family background, when suddenly the alarm in the cafeteria starts blaring. All students please evacuate to the outdoor area promptly, the speaker in the cafeteria said. This is when the reporters got in, right? I thought to myself and recall this scene in the anime. Everyone else starts panicking and started running to the exit. They were pushing and shoving each other. If this continued any longer, people will get hurt. I quickly told Yaoyorozu-chan to make a megaphone for me. Once she did, I stood on top of the table and said in the loudest voice I can muster in case the megaphone wasn't enough. Everyone please calm down. It's only just some reporters. Look, you can see them out the window right there. I said and pointed to the window facing the entrance. Sure enough, some reporters got into the school, but they were immediately dealt with by the UA staff. Hearing my voice, everyone soon calmed down and came back to their sense, and felt ashamed of themselves. They soon returned to their seats, and sure enough, the speaker in the cafeteria sounded, "Reporters have passed into the building. Don't worry, everything was taken care of." Hearing the statement, they finally calmed down. I blew a sigh of relief and no one got seriously hurt. People looked at me with gratitude and they thanked me for my action. In class, Aizawa-sensei praised me for my quick thinking. He then informed us that tomorrow we will be doing rescue training outside of school. I was happy, however, that happiness didn't last long. Since rescue training should start tomorrow, that also means that the League of Villains will finally make a move. I have to prepare myself so I can properly protect my friends. Chapter 24: Rescue Training and League of Villains. Today is the day the rescue training starts and when the League of Villains attacks. I went downstairs and saw my family. I approached my Oniai-chan and asked, "Oniai-chan, our class will be doing rescue training, so can I borrow Crow-san for today? I can't tell that villains will attack us since they will obviously question how I know about it. So the best solution in my opinion was to bring Crow-san. That way it can contact my Oniai-chan immediately when the villains arrive." "Why do you need my crow?" Itachi Oniai-chan asked. Since we will be doing rescue training, we have to practice rescuing people, right? I thought that Crow-san can help me locate the people that needed to be rescued. I quickly made up an excuse and said. He nodded to my explanation. Itachi Oniai-chan weaved some hand signs. He then bit his finger and placed his hand on the floor. A small cloud of smoke appeared and Crow-san showed up. Onaikan then told Crow-san that he will be watching over me for today. It nodded and perched on my shoulder. "Thanks, Oniai-chan," I said while smiling. We then ate breakfast together before I left for UA. When I reached class, Mina and Ochako saw my Oniai-chan's crow resting on my shoulder. "Isn't that Crow-san?" Mina excitedly asked. "Long time no see, Crow-san," Ochako happily greeted. When we were young, we used to occasionally play with Itachi Oniai-chan's crow, but our play sessions become less and less when we got older. So both of them were really excited to meet Crow-san again. Crow-san was also pretty happy as it fly around Mina and Ochako. While the three of us were spending time with the crow, more and more of my classmates arrived. They were agitated to see a large crow in the classroom but soon calmed down after I explained that it was my Oniai-chan's. Aizawa-sensei soon entered the classroom. He told us to change into our hero costumes, and that we will be leaving to go to a facility for our rescue training as it was off campus. He glanced at Crow-san before shrugging his shoulders, thinking that it was normal. Together we quickly went to change into our costumes, and met up with Aizawa-sensei at the buses. Ida was seriously acting out his role as a vice class rep, and telling everyone to get in an orderly line. But soon he became depressed knowing that the bus was pretty big, and that it can easily fit all of us, leaving at least 10 or 15 seats empty. I'm currently sitting with Ochako, Mina, Azui Midoriya, Ida and Kirishima. Crow-san was resting on my lap. The journey was pretty relaxing and we just chatted with each other. When we arrived I was surprised by how big the place was, and it reminded me of the massive stadium I used to train in. Waiting for us at the entrance was the Space Hero 13. We were all very excited to see her there. She guided us into the building and we were all shocked by what was inside. 13 explained that this place was called the USJ for Unforeseen Stimulation Joint. She then explained that each part of the facility will train us on how to do a safe save and rescue in any hazardous situation such as in a fire, earthquake, flood or tornado, etc. As she was giving us a lecture, suddenly a black portal appeared at the center of the facility. Aizawa-sensei widened his eyes and told us to be on guard. Some of my classmates were pretty freaked out by the turn of events, and people dressed in evil-looking costumes began emerging from the portal. "Everyone stay back. 13, protect the students," Aizawa-sensei shouted, and he equipped his signature goggles. Probably 100 villains came out of the portal before eventually, a man with hands attached all over his body, a tall man covered in black mist with bright yellow eyes and metal-like rings around his neck, and a muscular monstrosity appeared. The monster has black skin with red-colored scars, and the head of the monster was shaped like a bird. The most disturbing thing was that the top of the monster's skull was removed, exposing its brain. The monster stared at us with its bloodshot eyes and my classmates froze in fright. The Nomu looked way scarier in real life. I thought and gritted my teeth. Crow-san, get to a safe place and quickly contact Oniai-chan. I said in a hurry. Crow-san nodded and flew it to a safe place. 13 told us to evacuate but were blocked by the man covered in black mist. The man claimed that they were known as the League of Villains. Before he can finish speaking, I sent 2 shurikens towards him. He absorbed my attack with his mist and launched my shurikens back at us. I deflected both of them with my tanto and 13 attacked with her quirk, Black Hole. However, the villain covered in mist deflected her attack as well, causing 13 to hurt herself. Ryan, you know jutsu. I shouted and fired lightning arrows at the villain. He quickly warped out of the way, and when he reappeared, multiple black tendrils shot out of the portals to capture us. I activated my Sharingan and nimbly dodged his attacks. The same thing can't be said about my classmates, and most of them immediately got restrained. I kept dodging while attacking him with lightning jutsu whenever I got the chance. More and more tendrils approached me at a faster pace than before. Suddenly one of the tendrils snagged one of my legs, and before I could cut it, 3 other tendrils wrapped around my limbs, immobilizing me. Tisk, you're annoying, let's have the Nomu deal with you. The man growled before throwing me and the rest of the class into a giant black portal. Itachi Povi. I was working in my agency when I heard a disturbing message from my crow. Villains attack, need help. The crow sent a mental message to me. Where? I asked immediately, panic can be heard in my voice. The crow told me that they were in the USJ facility. Such *T. I cursed as the facility was far from where my agency was. I rushed out of my office seeing my panicked expression. One of my sidekicks asked, Itachi-san, what's wrong? Quickly contact UA. The USJ facility was being invaded by villains. I shouted before sprinting out of the building. They were shocked but quickly recover and tried to contact UA. I build up chakra in my lower body and moved toward the USJ facility at the fastest speed possible. Please stay safe, Kaede. I prayed in my mind, but knowing her, she's most likely to fight the villains instead of running away. Chapter 25, The Nomu. Key POV. I was thrown into a black portal and I suddenly found myself in the air next to Aizawa-sensei. I did a backflip and landed on the ground. Aizawa-sensei saw me and was shocked. Uchiha, what are you doing here? He said with a frustrated tone. The black mist guy attacked and teleported us around the facility, I replied. He clenched his teeth and nodded. We were surrounded by countless thugs, and they looked at us with sadistic smiles. I got into a fighting position, my Sharingan spinning rapidly, watching every move the villains make. One wearing a hockey mask charged at me. He activated his quirks and his arms turned to steel. He tried to punch me, but I easily dodged and kicked him in the stomach, launching him back and causing him to collide with another villain, knocking them both out. All the villains at my side decided to charge all at once. I dodged and countered every time one of them attacked. I jumped back and fired 3 lightning arrows. It pierced 3 of the villains' shoulders or thighs, paralyzing them. I unsheathed my tanto and quickly parried a blade that was coming for my neck. The villains starting to fall one by one, however. Their numbers aren't dwindling anytime soon. Seeing I can easily handle myself, Aizawa-sensei decided to focus on his own battle and started going all out on the thugs at his side. I glanced at the man with hands all over his body. He was watching me with a pissed-off look. The Nomu was still standing beside him. Suddenly a black gate was created and the man covered in black mist showed up next to him. Why did you bring that brat here, Kurogiri? The man with hands all over his body asked. I apologize for my behavior, Shigaraki-sama. That girl is strong and I felt like it would be a good warm-up for the Nomu before fighting All Might. Kurogiri responded. Hearing his reasoning, Shigaraki nodded and looked at the Nomu. You heard him, go kill her, he said. When I heard their conversation, I frowned and prepared for the toughest fight in this skirmish. The Nomu tensed his muscles and leapt towards me while swinging his fist. Fast, I thought as I ducked under his arm. I then built up the chakra in my fist and landed a punch straight in his chest. The Nomu stumbled back a bit before resuming his assault. If I remember correctly, this particular Nomu has the quirk of shock absorption, super strength, and regeneration. It was built to defeat All Might. Therefore, using my lightning jutsu and Sharingan will be the best way to defeat him. While I was thinking, Nomu suddenly increased his speed and his fist was traveling toward my face at a ridiculous speed. Freeze! I said while looking into his eyes with my Sharingan. Luckily he was also looking at me, and he momentarily stopped for a second before continuing his attack. Luckily, that small amount of hesitation was enough for me to safely get out of the way. Boom, his fist struck the ground and a giant dent with cracks appeared. I shuddered thinking about what will happen to me if I reacted a bit too late. However, I now know that Sharingan works on him. I then proceed to attack him with lightning jutsu. It worked and the electricity gave him paralysis and his speed slowed down. I managed to get a few cuts with my tanto, but his wounds healed immediately. I clicked my tongue in annoyance. Seeing my normal attacks aren't working, I decided to use the strongest lightning release jutsu that I know of. Unfortunately, it will take some time to charge up. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. I yelled as 5 shadow clones appeared and started attacking the Nomu. Thankfully, the Nomu has very low intelligence and it started focusing its attention on my clones. This gave me enough time to do my strongest attack. Static started to form in both of my palms, and they get more and more powerful by the second. The Nomu have already destroyed 3 of my clones. When it finally destroyed my last clone, that's when the attack was ready. Lightning release. Dive of the Thunder Bird. I shouted. /N. Tell me if I used release incorrectly. I swiped both my hands horizontally in a chopping motion, and a giant falcon-like bird made out of pure lightning appeared behind me. It screeched loudly before it bomb-dived towards the Nomu. A large explosion was made as soon as it came in contact, and a large cloud of smoke obscured my vision. Is it over? Did I win? I muttered while staring at the smoke cloud. Sadly, things won't always go your way and a dark fist burst through the cloud, which I hastily blocked with my tanto. However, the force swept me off of my feet. I flew for a while before I finally impacted the ground and rolled a few more meters before stopping. I slowly stood up with shaky legs. The impact knocked the air out of my lungs and I gasped for breath. I looked at my tanto. The blade was completely shattered and unusable. I let go of my weapon as I can't use it anymore. I glanced towards the cloud of smoke. It dispersed and revealed a charred Nomu. It was breathing heavily. Unfortunately, his regeneration quirk kicks in. His skin slowly returns to its normal black color, undoing all my progress. Minapi of each of us was teleported to a different place. Thankfully, I got together with Zero and Todoroki. We managed to defeat the villains that came after us, and we made our way to the center where most villains gathered. We spotted Aizawa-sensei fighting some villains and Keed fighting some sort of abomination. I became worried when I saw Ki-chan's pained and tired expression. Ki-chan! I yelled out of instinct. However, that seemed to be a mistake. As soon as she glanced at us, the monster attacked. I heard someone call my name and I saw Mina looking at me with a worried expression. I sighed with relief knowing that my friend was safe. Unfortunately, Nomu took that moment to attack. I was already exhausted and I desperately dodged his barrage. After a few more seconds of the game of cat and mouse, I managed to get an opening. Rasengan! I exclaimed as a ball made of chakra appeared in my hand and I aimed it at his stomach. The Nomu intended to fight the Rasengan as he aimed his fist at my hand. A second explosion occurred, and I was once again sent backward from the shockwave. However, this time Nomu gripped my wrist and I can feel my bone fracturing from the pressure. I screamed in pain while the Nomu flung me around. The monster slammed me to the ground before picking me up and throwing me towards a wall. Bam! I hit the wall at a very fast speed, breaking it in the process and landed back on the ground. I can feel that my right arm and a few of my ribs are broken. Ki-chan! Mina screamed and ran towards me. I saw that the rest of my friends also finished fighting their villains and they were stunned to see my condition. I tried to get back up. After a few attempts, I was finally able to get on my 2 feet and vomited a mouthful of blood. Get away! I croaked. I can't do that. Mina replied with tears in her eyes. I took a step but my legs gave in and collapsed. I closed my eyes awaiting the impact and the pain that bring along with it. Before hitting the cold hard ground, I felt someone catch me in their arms. I opened my eyes and tried to see who caught me. Once I realized who it was, my eyes started to tear up. Rest now, Keed, I have arrived, Itachi Onie-chan said with a gentle smile. Oh? Onie-chan. I called out to him. I relaxed knowing that my Onie-chan has arrived at long last. I finally gave in to the pain and exhaustion and went unconscious. Chapter 26: A Brother's Wrath. Itachi Pivakid fell asleep in my arms and there was a relief expression on her face. I applied medical jutsu to help her relax, but it wasn't enough to heal her wounds. I stroked her hair and glanced at my palm. It was stained red with my sister's blood and my fingers trembled with rage. My breathing felt heavy and my mind became hazy. Kaede's blood. One of my biggest fears became true, and the small kindle in my heart transformed into a roaring fire. I glared at the monstrosity with pure hatred and bloodlust. Eraser's head suddenly arrived next to me and he glimpsed at Kaede with concern. "How is she?" he asked. "Kaede's fine for now, but she needed to seek medical attention as soon as possible." I gnashed my teeth. "You take care of the rest and I will deal with that thing," I said and gently placed my sister down. Eraserhead nodded. "Be careful, it looks like that monster has more than one quirk." I overheard their conversation. "Seems like the monster was specifically built to deal with All Might," he explained. "Also don't kill it if you then." I frowned and thought that this may be more annoying than expected. The monster roared and charged at us. I informed Ishido to take care of Kaede while I defeat this villain. Uraraka and Ishido have been friends with her for many years now, so I can put my trust in her to look after my sister. Katan. "Gokaku no Jutsu," I muttered and spit out a giant fireball toward the monster. Boom whoosh, the fireball exploded onto the large body of the monster before bursting into flames. The intense heat melted the beast's skin and it roared in agony. "What the hell are you doing, Nomu? Kill them!" A man covered in hands yelled angrily. The creature called Nomu grunted and sprinted at me while covered in fire. I leaped towards the monster and the floor cracked from the force. Our fists collided, generating a massive shockwave that shook the stadium. "Ha ha ha, this Nomu got shock absorption, super strength and regeneration, it's basically invincible," the man proudly announced. My brows furrowed and I quickly applied Jinjutsu to it before jumping away. The Nomu was trapped in my Jinjutsu and it punched wildly around him. I made the monster believe that it was still in combat with me. Shock absorption, huh? Fortunately, it does not have pain nullification. I thought and activated one of the abilities of my Manjiko Sharingan. Amaterasu. I muttered and my eyes spun rapidly. The Nomu was instantly ignited with dark flames and it howled in agony. The monster rolled on the ground and desperately tried to put out the black fire. Unfortunately, no matter what the Nomu does, my Amaterasu couldn't be extinguished. I calmly approached the monster and an orange aura overlapped my figure. "Susanoo," I said, and the aura expanded, forming the shape of a giant humanoid. The Susanoo grabbed the villain by the leg and repeated the same actions it have done to my sister. After letting out my rage, I tossed the disheveled villain on the ground. Its body was charred and limbs were bent on a strange angle. The Nomu was still alive despite the groove's wounds and it breathed weakly while letting out weird groans. "Impossible!" Shigaraki yelled in disbelief. "Shigaraki-sama, the attack has failed, we need to leave immediately," Kurogiri suggested. Suddenly they both felt intense heat beside them, and they spotted a fireball traveling toward them at a fast speed. Without hesitation, Kurogiri used his quirk and they retreated back to their hideout. "Itachi-this?" I clicked my tongue seeing the leader behind this attack escape. Eraserhead seemed to have taken care of the rest of the weak villains, and when the situation relaxed, I returned to Kaede's side. I knelt down and tenderly brought Kaede into a princess carry. Seeing her in this state saddened me and I was careful not to disturb her too much. "Don't worry, I am here." A man shouted and landed on the ground near me. "All Might," I muttered with a complicated expression. All Might was surprised by my presence, but he was even more shocked when he saw the unconscious Kaede in my arms. "How is she?" he said with concern. "Kaede's condition is stable right now. I will take her to the UA infirmary." "Don't let this happen again," I snarled. "I'm sorry," All Might said while staring at the floor with shame. Eraserhead explained to All Might what happened and he was stunned about the Nomu but was grateful that I was able to take care of it. Kaede's classmates walked up to me. "Will Kei-chan be okay?" Uraraka asked with a scared tone. I told them that she will be fine and mustered a tired smile. I left the facility and quickly ran to UA, while applying small medical ninjutsu to her injuries. When we finally arrived, I was lectured by Recovery Girl, but her words entered one of my ears and left through the other. All I'm worried about was my little sister. A few hours later, I opened my eyes and received a massive headache. I grunted in pain and slowly investigated my surroundings. I was laying on a bed. There was medical equipment and a small old lady typing something on an office chair at the other end of the room. I noticed that my injuries were all healed, but for some reason, I felt very tired. I sat up from the bed. "Where am I?" I asked in an exhausted tone. "You are in the UA infirmary," the old lady responded. She got off her seat and walked to my bed. "Hello, I'm the pro hero Recovery Girl." Recovery Girl introduced herself. I nodded. "What happened?" "You got hurt while fighting villains. Your brother then defeated the villain that you were fighting." "Don't worry, everyone is safe," she explained. I sigh in relief knowing that everyone's fine. Recovery Girl told me that she has fully healed me and I'm okay now. However, the healing took most of my stamina and I have to go home early. Once I got home, Mom gave me a handful. She said what I did was very foolish and that she have been very worried. I was sad that I made Mom worried, but I became more determined to get stronger so it won't happen again. Chapter 27 Rainy Day. After a few more days of rest, I finally returned to school. My friends were all worried about me, but they managed to calm down when I reassured them I'm fine and my injuries were healed. Class returned to normal and everything was going great until, why did it have to rain so suddenly? I complained while standing at the entrance of the school with Mina and Ochako. I didn't bring my umbrella today because I forgot to read the weather forecast. Mina and Ochako glanced at me with pity. "We can together walk to your house first so that we can share our umbrellas?" Ochako suggested. "Don't worry, it's fine, I can just wait for the rain to stop," I said while smiling. The last thing I want was to be a burden for my two friends. "Are you sure?" Mina asked with concern. "Yeah, don't worry about me. See you guys tomorrow," I answered while giving them a thumbs up. Both of them eventually nodded and waved me goodbye. As I watched my best friends walk away, my smile slowly disappears as I sigh in frustration. What should I do? The rain doesn't seem to end anytime soon. I muttered dejectedly. Shoto Piovo. My name is Shoto Todoroki. I'm a student at UA wishing to be a pro hero. My father was the second strongest hero endeavor, and I wished to surpass him in strength to make him proud. I never had any friends because I prefer to be by myself. My mother told me that I need to smile more and must at least make one friend in school. Well, I haven't made any yet. Probably because I always have this cold expression. No one wanted to willingly talk to me. /n. Shoto's life got better. But I still kinda want him to have this loner and more mature attitude, if you know what I mean. I did converse with some of my classmates, but it was only during the combat trial and the USJ incident. Despite that, I wouldn't consider us as friends, more like acquaintances. However, there is one girl in my class that made a large impression on everyone including me. Her name was Kaede Aoki. She has a beautiful appearance with long black hair, black eyes and a radiant smile. When she first greeted me, I was surprised that there was someone wanted to talk to me. I paid no mind and greeted her back. I didn't think much of the interaction since she have done the same with everyone else. Her personality was, say to the least, wild and extremely extroverted. Uchiha's characteristics were exactly the opposite of mine, and in my opinion, it may be troublesome if I become friends with her. Apparently, she's the one that scored the highest in the practical exam. I participated in the recommendation exam, so I'm not sure whether that was a good achievement. But she further surprised me with her performance in the quirk apprehension test on the first day, and during the combat trial. That's when I realized that she's strong, very strong. I'm unsure I can win if we ever fight each other. Even if I win, it's safe to say that I will suffer some sort of major injury doing so. Knowing this make me realize that I'm still weak. I needed to work harder than before to surpass my father. Right now I was walking to the school entrance. It was raining, but luckily I brought my umbrella. As I was leaving, I saw someone standing by the entrance sheltering from the rain. I walked closer and realized that person was Uchiha. There was a frown on her face. When I was about to ignore her and leave, my conscience refrained from doing so. I felt guilty knowing that I'm leaving her like this, and the scene during the USJ incident briefly flashed in my mind. It wouldn't be a stretch to say that she has protected us by engaging with that monster. If Uchiha wasn't the one that fought, that beast could have ended us easily. I sighed, and in the end I decided to approach her. "Kipyovi, what's wrong?" I heard a voice beside me. I looked beside me and saw Todoroki looking at me with his usual cold look. "Oh, it's Todoroki-kun," I said once I realized who the voice was from. Why did you say Kuan after my last name? Shouldn't it be San? He asked with confusion. Well, that's because we have greeted each other, so I already consider us friends, I replied with a smile. Hearing this, his eyes widened before returning to his normal expression. I see, he said. Anyway, is there something you need? I asked, wondering why he talked to me in the first place. He paused for a while before speaking in a calm voice. I saw you feeling down, so I was just wondering what's wrong. Oh, it's nothing. I'm just waiting for the rain to end since I don't have an umbrella, I answered. Shoto POV. I was surprised when she already considered that I'm her friend even though we only talked once. I don't know whether I should feel happy that she considers me a friend or think that she was naive. Uchiha told me that she was waiting for the rain to stop. I sighed and held out my umbrella. Take it, I told her. She was stunned by my behavior and quickly shook her head. No, it's okay, I can just wait. It's fine, my quirk allows me to manipulate ice, so I dealt with way colder temperatures than this, I reasoned. Finally, after a bit of back and forth arguing, she reluctantly nodded and took the umbrella off my hand. Thanks, Todoroki-kun. I will repay this favor, she said with a large bright smile. Her face was indeed really beautiful. For some reason, my heart skipped a beat just by looking at it. I left the school while being showered by the rain. I was confused by this weird feeling, but I ignored it and walked home. Key POV. I was surprised when Todoroki-kun offered me his umbrella, and I promised myself to find a way to repay him. A day later. Today in class, Todoroki-kun wasn't here today. I was hoping that I can return the umbrella that I borrowed. I raised my hand and asked Aizawa-sensei where he is. He told me that Todoroki was sick today and can't come to school. Was this what they called man's pride? I thought when I remembered him basically forcefully handing me the umbrella. Hearing this, I got guilty, thinking that it was my fault that he was sick. Yash, let's pay him a visit this afternoon to see how he's doing. This will be how I will repay the favor, I thought to myself. By the end of the day, and I went to find Aizawa-sensei. I asked whether I can have the address of Todoroki's house since I want to visit him. Surprisingly, he actually gave me the address. I was not expecting it to work, so I left his office stunned. I called my mom and told her that I will be going to a friend's house, so I will be late. I soon left school and followed the address Aizawa-sensei gave me. I finally arrived at a big traditional Japanese-style building just like my house. I walked to the front door and knocked. POV. I was drinking coffee in the dining room, and today my son Shoto got sick. He told me that he somehow lost his umbrella, which was weird as he's never been this careless. But I put that thought behind me, thinking that it's probably that he's in a new school, and he's still adjusting to his surroundings. Shoto was never really a social person, and I started to get more and more worried about him, so when he enrolled at UA, I told him that he at least have to make one friend. While I was contemplating, I heard a knock at our front door. Who would be knocking at this time? I thought as I walked towards the door and opened it. I saw a beautiful girl with black hair wearing the standard UA uniform. I was shocked and confused by her arrival. Hello, is this Shoto Todoroki's house? She asked with a gentle voice. I widened my eyes upon hearing my son's name. I slowly nodded and introduced myself as his mother. She then explained the reason she was here. Her name is Kaede Uchiha, and apparently, my son handed her his umbrella yesterday because she forgot hers, which causes my son to be sick. I was surprised at my son's gentlemanly action. She then asked if she can come in and visit him. Hearing this, a wide grin started to form on my face, thinking that my Shoto finally got a friend, and even a girl at that. Key POV. I was amazed seeing Todoroki-kun's mom, as it was different from the anime, but also glad that they have a better life. I explained the purpose of my visit, and for some reason, she have a massive grin on her face as I asked whether I can come in. She happily obliged and gave me directions to Todoroki's room. His house was bigger than mine, and after wandering around, I eventually found his room. Todoroki, it's Kaede, may I come in? I asked while knocking. I waited a bit and there was no response. He must have been sleeping, so I quietly let myself in. I entered and saw Todoroki laying in his bed with a wet towel on his forehead. I took a chair in the room and sat beside him. I watched him patiently and tried to ease his discomfort by wiping his seat and changing the wet towel. It wasn't long before Todoroki slowly opened his eyes. Ah, you're awake, Todoroki-kun, I chirped. His eyes instantly snapped open and he sat up in a daze. Todoroki stared at me with astonishment and we sat there in awkward silence. Why are you here? Todoroki got straight to the point and asked. You got sick because of me, so I will take care of you to repair the favor. I said and patted my chest. No thanks, he said as he turned and faced the other way. Are you hungry? I will make you something to eat, I declared and feigned ignorance at his words. I waited for a few minutes before he slowly nodded. Great, what do you want to eat? I asked as I looked at him with expectation. Cold soba, he replied. Why cold soba? Aren't you sick? I thought. I'm afraid that won't do. You're sick, so I will make rice porridge, I announced. He unenthusiastically grunted. I happily went downstairs and asked Mrs. Todoroki if I can borrow the kitchen to make porridge. She excitedly agreed with sparkles in her eyes, telling me that I can use any of the ingredients. I got confused by her weird behavior, but I ignored it because I have a job to do. Now again, you may be wondering, Keith, since when can you cook? Actually, I have been practicing and my skills are pretty good, thank you very much. Why haven't I told you? Simple like every answer to your questions you didn't ask, smiley face. I went to the kitchen and started preparing the meal. After 20 minutes I finally finished. Since porridge going to have no taste, I added some other ingredients to give it some flavor. I carried the bowl back upstairs and returned to Todoroki's room. Here you go. Keith's signature porridge, I said with a smug tone. He just weirdly glanced at me before trying to sit up. I quickly pushed him back down and said, No, you're the patient, I will be feeding you, I announced and grabbed the spoon before bringing it close to his face. Seeing this, Todoroki-kun's calm demeanor collapsed, and he started blushing, which was pretty strange. But I shrugged my shoulder and started spoon-feeding him. When he finished the food, I told him I got to go and bid him farewell. His face was still pretty red. The fever must be worse than I thought. I prayed that he would recover soon. I went downstairs, cleaned up the kitchen, said goodbye to Mrs. Todoroki, and left. I was happy that I was able to repay the favor, and I walked home with a satisfied smile. Shoto was embarrassed to death being spoon-fed by a girl, and especially that girl was one of his classmates. During dinner time his health improved, which allowed him to eat with his family. Unfortunately, the embarrassment didn't stop there, as his mother described what has happened this afternoon to the rest of his family, and his siblings constantly teased him, not giving him a break. Finally, they stopped and Shoto's older sister Fuyumi asked, By the way, what's her name? Her name is Kaede Uchiha and she's such a kind and beautiful girl, Rei Todoroki answered while fantasizing about her son marrying Kaede. Everything was well until Endeavor or Enji found out her name. He dropped his chopsticks and started to sweat heavily. To confirm his suspicion he nervously asked, Just asking, is this Kaede girl Red Crow's sister? Shoto nodded before focusing back on his food. Everyone was shocked by this news, but the person who was more surprised was Enji himself. His face instantly paled and he immediately lost all appetite. That night Enji Todoroki had a horrible nightmare of Itachi coming after him with a cleaver. Chapter 28, Scouting the Competition. Next day, Thirpyo, Todoroki-kun's here today? Kaede muttered and watches Shoto enters the classroom. My porridge must have worked, Kaede thought, and she has a proud smile on her face thinking about it. Kaede walked toward him and asked, Hi Todoroki-kun, are you all better now? Shoto slowly nodded with his usually calm expression. Yes, I'm better now, Uchiha-san. Still with the san? Even what we did yesterday, Kaede said with a disappointed tone. Suddenly Shoto's face got a bit red from shame and embarrassment when he remembered Kaede spoon-fed her porridge to him. But he quickly recovered and stayed silent. Why aren't you calling me Uchiha-chan yet? I even cooked for. Before she can finish, Shoto quickly covered her mouth with his hands. His face was very red now and his cold mask was slowly crippling away. Please stop, Uchiha-chan. Shoto finally gave in and said in a quiet voice that only Kaede could hear. Yay. We're friends now, Kaede said with excitement, and she gave him a quick hug before going back to her own seat. Because of her denseness, she has basically no concept of the power of a woman's body, so she wasn't even slightly aware of how much damage she had just done. Shoto froze like a statue, still in shock at what she did. Some other boys saw what happened and stared at Shoto with jealous looks. Who could blame them? It was a well-known fact that Kaede was one of the most beautiful girls in school. Paired with her extremely social and kind attitude, she has become extremely popular. Sensing their ill intents, he sighed in annoyance, thinking that Kaede may just make his school life a bit worse than before. However, he will be lying if he said that he doesn't like talking to someone once in a while. Although he prefers to be by himself, it will get boring or lonely sometimes. After I talked with Todoroki-kun, I went back to my seat, and soon enough Aizawa-sensei arrived. The UA Sports Festival will start soon, Aizawa-sensei suddenly announced out of the blue. He explained to us that the event was very important as it would be broadcasted to the public, and pretty much everyone will watch it. If we did very well in the sports festival and stood out among the students, there will be more pro hero requesting us for an internship, and we're ecstatic that we got a chance to work with the pro heroes. When school finally ended, we are preparing to leave the classroom. As soon as Ochako opened the door. "What's going on?" she yelled in shock. Outside, our classroom was filled with countless students staring into our class. I know most of them since I conversed with them during lunch, but it was still extremely strange. "Why are you all here?" Ida questioned them. "To scout out the enemy," Bakugo replied while walking towards them looking extremely pissed off. "Move out of the way, trash," he said while looking at them with anger. "I came to see what the famous Class 1A are like, but to me you seemed pretty arrogant." A tall man with messy purple hair came out of the crowd and blocked his path. "Ah, it's Shinso-kun," I thought and quietly observed him. I didn't have a chance to talk to Shinso since I can't find him in the cafeteria that day. He said that he was disappointed with our attitudes and think that we were just arrogant when we defeated the villains in the USJ incident. Shinso then told us that many people applied for the hero course but failed the exam, and that by doing well in this festival, they may gain a chance to get in. This means that if we do badly, we will get kicked out of the hero course. Hearing their explanation, all my classmates felt very tense, even if I knew that from watching the anime. It was still pretty nerve-wracking. Bakugo got offended by Shinso-kun's remark, and I was sure he was about to do something insanely stupid. I quickly stood up and moved towards the crowd. I pretend to act dumb and be completely oblivious to the tense atmosphere. "Hiya, it's nice seeing you guys here, may you let me through?" I smiled brightly. Third POV seeing Kaede smile. The people that know her felt a warm feeling and happily shuffled out of the way for her. Thanks to her, the tense atmosphere has toned down a notch. However, since Hitoshi Shinso never met her, he still stood there and curiously stared at Kaede. He thought that she have used her quirk to hypnotize people, but the truth was she just had that many friends. Hitoshi wanted to toy with her, so by using his brainwashing quirk, he asked Kaede a question. "I haven't seen you before. What's your name?" Kaede forgot his ability in the heat of the moment and happily responded. "Kaede Uchiha, wanna be friends?" Suddenly she froze and Hitoshi smiled, thinking that his quirk have worked. Unfortunately for him, Kaede's Sharingan activated out of instinct and sensed that she was getting brainwashed. She instantly used her chakra to disrupt it and broke free. Kaede immediately recovered, and to hide her surprise, she asked nonchalantly, "So what's your name?" Hitoshi was shocked that she undid his quirk's ability at such a fast speed, and he instinctively replied, "Hitoshi, Shinso." "Nice to meet you, Shinso-kun," Kaede happily said. "And everyone, let's do our best at the sports festival, okay?" Kaede then raised her fist in the air before walking away. The rest of Class 1A quickly followed after her, while the crowd was dazed by her cute aura. They were thankful that she stopped Bakugo from doing something that he will probably regret, and Kaede was thankful that her plan of dispelling the tense atmosphere had worked. Kaede POV. I sighed in relief that I managed to successfully calm everyone down. I was still surprised that I almost got brainwashed, but my Sharingan saved me. This just shows that I need more training. I pumped myself up and started to set my goals on what I should achieve in the next 2 weeks. Chapter 29 UA Sport Festival starts now in first round. 2 weeks later. POV finally. Today's the day when the UA Sports Festival starts. I have done non-stop training, and I have recreated the Chidori. It was easier than I thought. Just like coating my tanto with lightning, I just need to do the same to my hand. I honestly felt stupid for not recreating it earlier. The festival also banned any equipment and I couldn't use my tanto. Thus learning Chidori was really helpful. /N. Sasuke mastered it in around 2 weeks, so I think this is the right amount of time for her to master it as well. I also asked Mom to further train me in medical ninjutsu. Thanks to her, I can now heal more significant wounds such as a stab from a knife. Lastly, I did some simple combat training and agility training, and that's how my 2 weeks went by. Currently, our class was in a changing room inside a large stadium in our school. Everyone was looking pretty tense. They can't help it since if we didn't do well here, we may be forced to drop out of the hero course. Don't worry, everyone, I believe we will do great, I said and tried to cheer them up. Some chuckled at my encouragement, and Mina and Ochako smiled fondly at me, but I could tell that they were trying to hide the anxious look on their faces. While preparing, a UA staff told us it was time. We entered a dark hallway. After walking for a bit, we finally saw some sort of light, and slowly we arrived at the center of the stadium. My first thought was that there were so many people. Just by looking around, the number was probably in the thousands. Other classes also arrived from different entryways, and soon we were lined up in rows. I spotted my family with my Sharingan, and I gave them a quick wave. I could see that they were waving back, which made me very happy. The pro hero Midnight stood on the stage. Welcome to the UA Sports Festival. Before we start, let us have the representative of the first year Kaede Aoki say a few words. Come again. I uttered. Everyone then looked at me with expectation. I frowned and my eyes nervously darted around. The representative? When the heck was I chosen and why? No way, was it because I scored the highest in the entrance exam? I took a deep breath and accepted my fate. I slowly approached the stage and Midnight handed me the microphone. The crowd was silent and I felt all their eyes observing me. I desperately tried to muster up something before gulping. I stared at my classmates and smiled. Hello everyone. Let's all try our best and have a wonderful time. There was silence before the audience applauded and cheered. I glanced at the rows of students and they seemed to be more relaxed. That means I did well, right? I returned to my spot, and Midnight declared that the first round of this sports festival would be an obstacle course. The course surrounds the entire stadium. Apparently, anything goes as long as you stay on the course. Suddenly, Present Mix's voice came through a loudspeaker. Hello everyone, the first round will start shortly. Students, please go to the red gate on the stadium's right. We all went towards the giant gate. When we arrived, the gate opened, and we got ourselves ready for what was about to come. I observed the other class and surprisingly I spotted a purple midget. It seems like Mineta got into another hero class. I'm glad that he at least made it into the school. No matter how perverted he was, I still felt a slight bit of guilt when I found out I had taken his spot. Students, on your mark, get set, go. Present Mike said through the speaker. An alarm sounded and we all started sprinting. Just like in the entrance examination, I increased my speed with the help of my chakra. The first obstacle was dozens of gigantic robots blocking the path. I weaved hand signs while sprinting and fired lightning arrows at my targets. The attack landed and robots began to convulse wildly. With this opportunity, I darted through the gaps between the bots and left the first years in the dust. I glanced behind me and saw Todoroki and Bagwo pursuing me. However, Boom giant fists slammed on the ground, intercepting their paths. The villain robots have already recovered from my electrocution, and their red eyes glowed ominously. I smirked. The villain robots have given up on me and all of their attention was on the two. I took this chance and continued running, while I heard the angered shouts of Bakugo from behind. It wasn't long until I reached the second obstacle. It was a steep cliff with a dark gap beneath. I stopped on the side and glanced down. I really couldn't see what was underneath and I subconsciously questioned the integrity of UA. I tensed my leg muscles and leapt. My body shot forward like a rocket and I grabbed onto a piece of rock and stabilized myself. I could hear my classmates catching up and I picked pace. With my feet safely planted on the wall, I sprinted up the cliff with ease. After the wall ran up the cliff, I reached the final section of the obstacle race. The last part of the course was a minefield. My Sharingan activated and time seemed to slow down. 4 feet to the left. 5 feet forward. 2 feet to the right. I decisively analyzed the path and chose the safest step that was free from the mines. With my agility, I smoothly traversed the minefield. Whoosh, behind me, Todoroki and Bakugo were catching up, and they don't look so pleased with me being at the front. I stick my tongue out and they scowled as a mischievous thought flashed across my mind. I dug my feet into the ground and kicked. Suddenly, 5 mines were launched out of the sandy field and I kicked the mines at my friends. Their eyes widened with shock and hurriedly tried to dodge out of the way. Boom X for the two were blasted away from the massive shockwave generated by the explosions. I sprint with all my might and with one final jump, I crossed the finish line and secured first place. Third POV, we have it folks. Kaede Aoki has secured first place in the obstacle course. Present Mike announced. The crowd went wild. They were surprised by the abilities Kaede demonstrated in the course. That's my Kaede, Mikoto shouted in the spectator seat with Itachi and Fugaku beside her, nodding happily. Sunazuku Midoriya came second with his thoughtful planning in the minefield. Katsuki Bakugo came third and Shoto came fourth. Shoto and Katsuki gave Kaede an annoyed look, but she just cheekily smiled at them. Kaede POV, all of my classmates finished the race. And there were also some Class 1B students and Class 1C students. I spotted Mina and Ochako. I went towards my two best friends and congratulated them. Okay, 42 people have made it. That means the first round was over. The rest will be eliminated. Midnight declared. If I remember correctly, the second round will be a cavalry battle. That means I will need to form a team. But wait, I felt like there was something critical I was missing. Chapter 30 Cavalry Battle, and would anyone like to team up with me? Kaede POV, when the course ended, only 42 of us made it to round 2. Round 2 of the UA Sports Festival will be Cavalry Battle. Midnight loudly said while standing on the stage. Midnight then starts explaining the rules. For the cavalry battle, 4 people will form a group. 1 at the front, 2 at the back, and the 3 support the last person sitting on their shoulders. Each person will be given points for how well they did in the obstacle race. The one at the top will be wearing the headband with the total number of points from the group. To earn points, each group has to steal the headbands from the other group, and we will have to protect our headbands from being stolen. You won't get out even if you lose your headband or fall onto the ground. Now that's all the basic rules. However, there's one thing you need to know, the person who got first place will have a point total of 10 million. That lucky star is Kaede Aoki. Midnight announced and looked at me with an evil smile. Oh, that's right, I said and slapped my fist with my palm. I finally remembered the special rule in this second round. Wait a minute. I froze and glanced around. I felt the other students staring at me with greed. Mina and Ochako gave me a pitying look. Especially Baguko, and I felt uncomfortable under his gaze. I think he won't hesitate to attack me as soon as the match starts. I chuckled awkwardly and rubbed the back of my head. Now you got 15 minutes. Quickly form your groups. Midnight said, and a giant timer behind her started counting down. Third POV, sorry Ki-chan, but I have to win no matter what, Mina said with sadness. Ochako nodded and Kaede waved them off, understanding that she would do the same in their shoes. She hurriedly looked around. Everyone was avoiding her as they all knew that people would immediately target her for the 10 million points. She sighed in frustration, but her mood quickly changed when she saw someone being alone. Shoto was also looking around, and nobody wanted to approach him because of his usual expression. Kaede happily appeared behind him and tightly hugged his back. Let's be in a group, Todoroki-kun, she said with an excited tone. Once again, Shoto suffered a heavy blow from Kaede's denseness, and he reluctantly nodded as no one else wanted to group up with him. Fortunately for him, Kaede quickly let go and he felt the 2 soft bulges moving away from his back. Shoto felt his heart skip a beat again just like last time. Suddenly, the hair on the back of his neck stood up. He sensed 2 killing intents from the spectator seats. It was suffocating, but luckily, as soon as they came, they disappeared. 10 seconds earlier, Fugaku and Itachi spotted Kaede hug Shoto and stared at him with fury. Mikoto saw her husband and son staring at the boy with extreme hatred and frowned. Before they were going to do something stupid and embarrassing, she quickly built up a chakra in her fists and smacked both of them in the back of the head. Thud, both men slumped in their seats, unconscious with red, swollen bumps on their heads. Mikoto knows they were very protective of Kaede, but sometimes it's too much, and they weren't trying to hide it. How will Kaede be able to marry in the future with the 2 of you trying to murder every boy that got close to her? Mikoto thought and sighed tiredly. Present time. After Kaede and Shoto teamed up, Momo Yaoyorozu and Ibara Shiozaki from Class 1B joined as they suffered the same predicament. They decided that Kaede would be the one on top while Shoto was in the front, and Momo and Ibara would be at the side. I have grouped up with Todoroki, Yaoyorozu, and Shiozaki. I was given the role of being at the top. We then created a genius plan that could take out multiple groups. A UA staff then handed me a headband, and I wore it on my head. When every group was ready, a loud buzzer sounded, signaling the start of the second round. Immediately, our group moved to the corner of the field. Unsurprisingly, many groups followed us, including Midoriya's and Bakugo's groups. As they got closer, I smirked and activated my Sharingan, and they instinctively looked directly into my bright red eyes. As expected of Midoriya, who observed our quirks during the combat trial, he shouted, "Quickly, don't look into her eyes." No one other than Bakugo's group listened. No matter how much Bakugo hated Midoriya, even he has to admit that Midoriya won't say something like that without reason. Unfortunately, the rest of the groups were still blindly charging at us. "Freeze," I said, and all of them momentarily stopped due to my Sharingan. There were too many people and I couldn't completely stop them. However, that pause was enough time for Todoroki to use his ice to trap everyone's feet, and I effortlessly snatched the headbands off their heads. I glanced at the group. Only Midoriya and Bakugo's group managed to escape Todoroki's attack. We ran past the group stuck on the ice. However, Bakugo's group quickly blocked us off. He leapt off his group's shoulders and flew at me with his explosive quirk. Katsuki flew towards Kaede at a fast speed. He realized that Kaede's eyes could affect other people, but out of habit he still looked. He flew at an insane pace and grabbed the 10 million point headband off her head before Hanta Zero used his tape quirk to bring him back. "Did you get it?" Hanta asked. Katsuki nodded and tied the headband to his head. "What are you doing, Bakugo-san?" Hanta then asked, confused about why Bakugo was touching his head with his hands. Katsuki was confused and realized that he never got the band. It was all just an illusion. He thought with a shocked look. I trapped Bakugo in my Genjutsu, and our group quickly escaped. Before he can once again chase after us, other people block him, and he's forced to deal with them. I lightly slapped the top of Todoroki's head and pointed. That way, that way." I think I saw a tick mark on his head, but he still followed my orders and went in the direction I pointed. Suddenly Midoriya's group cut in front of us. His group was like the cannon, with Tokoyami at the front and Ochako and Hatuzum at the back. Tokoyami used his quirk shadow to attack me while Hatsum used some net launcher to trap us, and Midoriya jumped towards us with a, "Is that a jetpack?" Yaoyorozu created a shield and blocked a strike from Tokoyami's shadow. Todoroki destroyed the net with his fire. Shiozaki tried to defend me from Midoriya with her vines, but he dodged them, and his distance between me started to shorten. I leapt off of my friend's shoulders and reached Midoriya. I spun in the air and swung my heel in a downward motion. Midoriya instinctively blocked and I smashed him into the ground. Unfortunately, Tokoyami managed to catch him with his shadow while Shiozaki did the same to me with her vines. After that brief exchange, we went to another location in the field. Bakugo and Midoriya were unrelenting as they continued to pursue us. Todoroki got wind of this and activated his quirk to the maximum. With a swipe of his hand, a vast ice wall came between the rest of the competitors and us. "Good job, Todoroki-kun," I said while patting his head. His face got a little red, and he just nodded. Shortly after, Midnight announced, "That's it, folks, round 2 of the UA Sports Festival have ended. This is the list of people that have made it into the final round." Midnight then pointed at the screen behind her, and a list of names came up. Shoto Todoroki Ibara Shiozaki Momo Yorozukite Uchiha Izuku Midoriya, Ochako Uraraka Fumikichi Tokoyami, Meihatsum Katsuki Bakugo Ijiro Kirishima Mina Ashido Hantasair Tetsu. Apparently that's his name. Juzo Hananuki Hitoshi Shinso Tenya Ida. I was glad the second round finally ended. Now the third round of the UA Sports Festival will start soon. If it goes to the anime, it will be a 1v1 battle. Chapter 31 1-on-1 battle. Third POV. Now the second round has ended, but before we start the final round, let's first have some recreational sport. For this one, every class will participate. Midnight exclaimed. We returned to the locker room to rest and prepare for the event. I was with a group of girls in my class and we talked about the recreational sport. I was pretty excited and it seemed fun from the anime. However, if I remember correctly, while we were having a conversation, 2 people approached us. Mineta and Kaminari showed up and spoke to Yaoyorozu. Yairzu-san, remember what Aizawa-sensei said? Even if they're in different classes, they still become good friends, huh? I thought while glancing at them. Wait, hold on, who are you? Ochako asked and pointed at Mineta. His name is Minoru Mineta from Class 1B, and he's a good friend of mine, so I let him in, Kaminari said. So about what Aizawa-sensei said? Yairzu hesitantly nodded and created 7 sets of revealing cheerleading clothes. She explained that these 2 said Aizawa-sensei told them to wear this during the recreational event. As the class rep, why wasn't I aware of this? I questioned the 2 boys. The 2 boys started sweating, and Kaminari quickly explained, we can't find you during lunch. He then awkwardly laughed it off. I see, I said, my voice full of suspicion. I was about to pick them up and examine them. However, black flames suddenly appeared on the outfits and burned them into ashes. Standing by the locker room door was Itachi Oniai-chan, with his Mangekyo Sharingan spinning wildly. He walked toward us and his bloodlust was on full blast. He glared at Mineta and Kaminari with a scowl. Both of them were shaking so hard and were about to wet themselves. Leave. His voice was full of hostility. The 2 boys quickly ran out of the room. Oniai-chan went back to normal and patted my head. Mom, Dad, and I were very proud that you have made it this far. We wish you luck on the last round, he said. Thanks. I will do my best. I responded with a delighted tone. He smiled slightly at my response before bursting into a flock of crows and disappearing. After the recreational sport, Key POV, the recreational sport has ended. And all I can say is that it was amazing. Now the 16 of us that didn't get eliminated were standing in the middle of the stadium. Looking at us, Midnight nodded and said, there's only 16 of you left. The last round of this sports festival will be a 1v1 battle. The rules of this round are simple. All you have to do is defeat your opponent or knock them out of the field. Now let's see who will be fighting who. Midnight said. Midnight again pointed at the screen, and our names appeared. Shoto Todoroki vs Hanta Siro Ibra Shiozaki vs Denki Kaminari Momo Yorozu vs Fumikichi Tokoyami Achiko Uraraka vs Katsuki Bakugo, Mei Hatsum vs Tenya Ida Ijiro Kirishima, vs Tetsu Mina Ishido vs Kid Uchiha Hitoshi Shinso vs Izuku Midoriya. Hearing that the last round will be a battle between students, the crowd was excited to see the capabilities of the students at UA. My first battle was against Mina. I thought. I walked toward Mina and tapped her shoulder. Let's have a fun battle, Mina-chan, I said with a cheerful tone. Yeah, may the best win, she replied with a smile. But our mood began to decline when we stared at the screen. Ochako will be fighting Bakugo, and we became worried. We glanced at Ochako and saw that she was scared. She fidgeted nervously while secretly glancing at Bakugo. Her hands trembled and an anxious look plagued her face. We approached Ochako and tried to cheer her up. Don't worry, Ochako-chan, you got this. Yeah, Ochako-chan, don't be scared. Mina and I reassured her. She nodded and smiled, but we both knew she was still very anxious. While encouraging Ochako, we were told to go to our class locker room to rest and prepare. Present Mike announced that the first round would be me versus Mina. Once we arrived, our class congratulated us, and I felt somewhat guilty since I was the one that got some of them eliminated. A UA staff walked in and told Mina and me to follow him to their respective waiting rooms. The class wished us luck before we left. Now the match between Kid Uchiha and Mina Ishido will begin. Present Mike yelled through the microphone. The crowd went wild. Mina and I went to our side of the field. Another pro hero, Cementos, was the referee of this 1-versus-1 battle, as he could immediately repair the field once the match finished. We grinned at each other, and Cementos started to count down. 3, 2, 1, start. Immediately, Mina threw 2 balls of acid, I summoned 2 lightning arrows, and both projectiles collided, destroying them. Mina then created acid on the ground and started sliding toward me. I also ran towards her, and we met in the middle. Punches and kicks were traded. She was more agile than I thought as she easily maneuvered around my attacks. Her combat skills were really good considering that she had also trained with me once in a while and was able to withstand my attack. Mina punched and I darted to the side. I performed a spinning kick and struck her back as Mina was sent staggering across the field. I suddenly felt a sting sensation on my shin. I glanced at my leg. My skin was red and it felt like I was burned. Mina chuckled. I knew I wasn't able to beat you in martial arts, but you also won't be able to touch me when my body is covered with acid. She pulls up her sleeve, revealing the slimy substance covering her skin. I winced and shook off the acid residue on my leg. Mina charged while spraying acid everywhere. I clicked my teeth in counter with lightning jutsu, but she dispelled them with the acidic liquids. I attacked while trying my best to avoid Mina's acid. Even if her body was protected, her mind was still fearful of my blows and she will instinctively avoid them. Learning this, I launched a high kick at her face. Mina leaned backward and my foot inched past her face. I took this opportunity and bent low to the ground and swept her legs. Mina, who was still recovering from her clumsy dodge, fell under my attack. I immediately pinned her to the ground while ignoring the burning sensation in my palms. Mina struggled and I tightened my hold. Eventually she gave up and slapped the concrete floor. Ow ow ow, okay, I surrender. Midnight hurriedly raised her flag. Winner Kidachiha. The crowd erupted in cheers and I let go of Mina, who was pouting while lying on the floor. However, she then got up and smiled at me. That was a fun fight, although it was a little too fast, she said while muttering the last sentence. We soon left the field and went to the spectator seats. Our classmates congratulated us, and President Mike announced the next battle. It's a battle between Kaminari and Shiozaki. It went pretty fast as Kaminari tried to use an all-out attack with his electricity, but he missed and his brain got fried. Shiozaki just grabbed him with her vines and moved him out of the arena. Once that finished, this next match was the one I was worried about. Next battle will be Ochako Uraraka versus Katsuki Bakugo, Midnight declared. Hearing this, Ochako whimpered, but we reassured her that it would be fine and she was led to the waiting room. After 10 minutes of waiting, the battle finally started. Ochako and Bakugo both walked to their side of the field. Cementos once again counted down, and the battle started. It's too painful to watch. Just like in the anime, Bakugo quickly overpowered Ochako. She landed some punches, but Bakugo was too powerful. She tried every move she could think of. Just like in the show, Ochako used her quirk on all the rock shrapnel and dropped them on Bakugo. However, that wasn't working as well as her injuries increased as time went on before finally, Ochako collapsed onto the floor with various cuts and bruises. Mina and I cried out. I couldn't control myself anymore. I got off my seat and leapt off the balcony of the spectator seats. I arrived next to her and checked her condition. After seeing that she was refined but unconscious, I sighed in relief. Some US staff quickly arrived, and they brought her to the infirmary. I followed them. Once they put her down in the infirmary bed, recovery girl healed Ochako with her quirk. Mina rushed in. How's Ochako-chan? She asked with concern. She's okay, but she's still asleep, I replied, and Mina calmed down. We seated next to Ochako and patiently waited for her to wake up. We waited for 20 minutes before Ochako slowly opened her eyes. Ochako-chan. Mina and I cried out in relief. Hey guys. She sat up and said in a tired tone. We sat there in silence before Ochako's expression crumpled, and she started crying. Instinctively, Mina and I firmly hugged her. We stayed like this until she stopped. Mina and I tried to comfort her, and her mood slowly returned to normal. Before we could finish our conversation, a UA worker bot came in and told me my match would start soon. The bot said that my next opponent would be Ibara Shiozaki, and that I should now go to the waiting room. It turns out we have stayed longer than expected, and other people have already finished their fights. I said my goodbyes and walked to the waiting room. 10 minutes passed, and I heard President Mick's voice from the speaker in the room. Now, the battle between Ibara Shiozaki and Kaede Uchiha will begin shortly. Hearing my name being called, I left the room and walked out to the stadium. Shiozaki was also there, and we both stood opposite each other. Third POV. When both girls reached their position, Cementos shouted, "The match between Kaede Uchiha and Ibara Shiozaki will begin." As soon as it started, Ibara used her vines to attack Kaede. Kaede activated her Sharingan and leapt back before the vine struck the ground where she was standing. Ibara didn't give Kaede anything breathing space and she created her signature vine shield and hid behind it with her eyes closed and praying before releasing many vines toward Kaede's direction. This time Kaede decided it was time and activates her Chidori. She slashed the vines like butter and Ibra frowned. She increases the intensity of her attacks while Kaede narrowly avoids them by escaping through the gaps in the plants. Suddenly, the vines began to gather and intertwine with each other, creating a large stalk. The stalk leaned forward as if was came to life, and Kaede hurriedly rolled to the sides as the large plant completely demolished one side of the field. Kaede gulped, and she don't want to know what will happen if she didn't dodge in time. The vines began to churn and rumble as Ibra charges up another attack. Kagebunshin no Jutsu! Kaede shouted and summoned 5 shadow clones. Ibra's frown deepened as she sensed 5 new targets with her vines. She ditched her plan as her gigantic vine broke apart and attacked the 6 Kaede individually. Kaede and her clones started dodging while moving towards Ibra's position. Ibra started to lose composure, and she swung her vines wildly as they made cracking sounds like whips. 1 2 3 4 5 Where's 6? Ibra's eyebrows furrowed when she couldn't detect the last Kaede. Suddenly her eyes widened and she peeked out of her shield. The last Kaede, the real one, was diving towards her from the air. She aimed her fists and with one shattering punch, boom, Kaede destroyed Ibra's shield, sending the girl flying backward. Ibra collapsed, and before she could recover, Kaede chopped Ibra in the neck and knocked her out. Kaede Uchiha wins. Midnight, who was watching the battle, said with a loud voice. Phew. Kaede wiped the sweat from her face and sighed. She manages to survive 2 rounds, but now was where it got serious. As if was came to life, and Kaede hurriedly rolled to the sides as the large plant completely demolished one side of the field. Kaede gulped, and she don't want to know what will happen if she didn't dodge in time. The vines began to churn and rumble as Ibra charges up another attack. Kagebunshin no Jutsu! Kaede shouted and summoned 5 shadow clones. Ibra's frown deepened as she sensed 5 new targets with her vines. She ditched her plan as her gigantic vine broke apart and attacked the 6 Kaede individually. Kaede and her clones started dodging while moving towards Ibra's position. Ibra started to lose composure, and she swung her vines wildly as they made cracking sounds like whips. 1 2 3 4 5 Where's 6? Ibra's eyebrows furrowed when she couldn't detect the last Kaede. Suddenly her eyes widened and she peeked out of her shield. The last Kaede, the real one, was diving towards her from the air. She aimed her fists and with one shattering punch, boom, Kaede destroyed Ibra's shield, sending the girl flying backward. Ibra collapsed, and before she could recover, Kaede chopped Ibra in the neck and knocked her out. Kaede Uchiha wins. Midnight, who was watching the battle, said with a loud voice. Phew. Kaede wiped the sweat from her face and sighed. She manages to survive 2 rounds, but now was where it got serious. Chapter 32 Semifinals. POV. After the battle with Shiozaki, I visited my class's spectating area. Once I arrived, my friends congratulated me. Even Ochako was there, and seeing that she seemed fine now, I was glad. I then asked them what happened to the rest of the first round while Ochako, Mina, and I were in the infirmary. The rest of the battle ended just like in the canon. Tokoyami has pushed Yorozu out of bounds with his shadow quirk. Midori Agate was trapped by Shinso's mind control, but he used one for all, breaking one of his fingers. He snapped out of the brainwashing and defeated Shinso. Hatsum used Ida as an advertising tool, and she surrendered once she used all her gadgets on him. Todoroki easily beat Zero with his ice. Lastly, Kirishima and Tetsu knocked each other out. They then had an arm wrestle, and Kirishima eventually came out on top. I was disappointed that I missed out on the fight, since it will probably be very awesome to see it close hand. However, I will happily miss it if it means that I get to make Ochako feel better. When I returned to my seat, Present Mike announced that the next battle would begin. It was super exciting to watch. Because of my presence, the matchup has been altered, but it was still awesome. This is how the rest of the second round of one-on-one battle turned out. /N. Turns out this silly duck has got the order of the matchups way wrong. Sorry about that. Smiley face. Don't worry. I made a simple diagram for you guys to help you understand it a bit easier. Todoroki fought Kirishima. Throughout the battle, Kirishima constantly destroyed Todoroki's ice, so he used his fire and Kirishima lost as he couldn't deal with the intense temperature. I was surprised to see that Todoroki using his fire, but I remembered that his life was better now, and that means that he didn't resent his father and his quirk. Ida and Bakugo battled each other. When Ida tried to land a fast kick, Bakugo used his quirk to slightly launch himself back, dodging the attack. Bakugo then grabbed Ida by the leg and punched him in the face. He then Kamehameha Ida right in the chest with his explosive quirk and he flew out of the field. Finally, Midoriya had one-on-one combat with Tokoyami. Out of our expectations, Midoriya surprisingly won. He managed to evade Tokoyami's shadow attacks. Midoriya closed the distance between them and defeated Tokoyami in close combat. The second round ended and only Bakugo, Todoroki, Midoriya, and I remained in the match. When Midoriya and Tokoyami finished fighting each other, Present Mike announced the next battle. That's some fantastic combat between Izuku Midoriya and Fumikichi Tokoyami. Now here's something even more exciting. The next battle will be between Kaede Uchiha and Kastuki Bakugo, two powerhouses of Class 1A as they swiftly took care of their opponents, one with elegance and grace, the other with pure strength and destruction. But who will be victorious? The crowd went ballistic at Present Mike's comment. Ochako and Mina gave me a worried look. Don't worry, I will be fine. I will avenge you, Ochako-chan, I said cheerfully and gave them a thumbs up. Huh. What did you say, you brat? I will destroy you. Bakugo heard what I said, and he shouted in a fit. We then together walked to our waiting room. On the way there, Bakugo got annoyed and glimpsed at me. Why are you following me? What do you want? He said with irritation. But our waiting room is in the same direction? I responded in an innocent. He grunted, and his walking speed increased, leaving me behind. Seeing this, I sighed. Your arrogance going to be your downfall one day, I thought. 10 minutes later. S/N. Author here again. I realized that I barely used any other lightning jutsu, and I will start using it more and more in battles. She will only be able to use Genin Chunin, and little few low-level Jonin ones. For the more broken ones, she will recreate them in the future. Both of us arrived on our side of the field. I declared in my mind that I decided to use a little more force than the usual just cause of what he did to Ochako. Bakugo was just staring at me with a scowl. Seeing that we're ready, Cementos raised his hand. On your mark. Set. Go. He shouted and brought his hand down. Bakugo immediately launched himself toward me with his explosions. He reached me in a blink of an eye and I leaned back as Bakugo's leg missed my head. I counterattacked with a fist aiming for his stomach, and he immediately propelled himself with the explosions to dodge the trajectory. His instincts were pretty good. I thought and watched Bakugo, feeling impressed. Bun. Saitichur no Jutsu. I shouted. Static electricity coated my palm and I struck Bakugo in the chest. The electricity acted like two opposite magnets and Bakugo repelled away. Bakugo gritted his teeth and used the explosions to rebalance himself, and he landed on the ground without getting hurt. Bakugo suddenly rolled to and my lightning bolt barely missed him. I took this opportunity and dug my hand into the ground and retrieved two palmfuls of shrapnel. I balled them together and threw the projectile like a baseball. Bakugo blocked with his hand, creating a massive explosion and disintegrating the shrapnel into pebbles. Black smoke littered the field, obscuring our visions, and I used this chance to sneakily hid in the darkness. Therpiv Katsuki clicked his teeth when he couldn't spot Kaede in the smoke. He quickly went to the edge of the field for safety and warily watched for any movement. For the first time ever, the boy felt nervous about this battle. Katsuki has always been prideful, and he dominated his opponents with ease. To him, every person was just a step for him to get stronger. However, that doesn't seem to be the case. Kaede predicted his attacks with ease and she manages to do damage to him. His blood boiled and he felt his anger rising as silence dominates the battleground. Whoosh! Suddenly, Kaede burst through the dense fog and Katsuki dodged as Kaede's fist demolished the ground where he was previously standing. Katsuki growled and immediately pounced on the open Kaede. Katsuki has a very unpredictable way of fighting. Using his explosions, he can easily jump around his opponent's blind spot with kicks and punches. Occasionally he will use his explosion as well to deal additional damage. However, for Kaede, her Sharingan was a powerful counter to his fighting style. She can tell what move Katsuki would make and deal with him accordingly. However, this time Katsuki was one step ahead and he kicked Kaede in the stomach. She fell to the ground and Katsuki punched her body. Poof! His opponent suddenly dispersed into a puff of vapor, and there was a look of bewilderment on his face. Katsuki's ears perked up when he heard the sound of roaring electricity on the other side of the field. The smoke dispersed and exposed the smirking figure of Kaede as she charges up her attack. Katsuki scowled when he realizes that he has completely fallen for her trap. Kaede POV when the smoke obscured Bakugo's vision. I created a shadow clone to distract him while I charged another one of my powerful attacks. After 2 minutes, I detected my shadow clone was defeated, and it was just in time. When the smoke diminished, I smirked while Bakugo stared at me with wide eyes. Raitun. Dinkamono Rashu no Jutsu. A massive amount of electricity was shot towards Bakugo. The statics began to form and shape into a rageful boar, and the beast dashed towards Bakugo. The pig tackled him in the stomach and Bakugo flinched when he felt the burning electricity traveling through his body. Bakugo coughed uncontrollably and I dashed towards him. He couldn't recover in time and felt my fist making contact with his stomach. Bakugo knelt down in pain and the last thing he saw was my foot smashing into the top of his head when I axe-kicked him in the face. His body went limp and he collapsed with a groan. Kaede Uchiha wins! Cementos exclaimed and the crowd erupted into applause. I may have gone overboard. I muttered as the medical bots carried Bakugo away. Chapter 33 Finals. After I defeated Bakugo, I walked back to where my friends were. Ochako and Mina sighed in relief that I didn't get hurt fighting him. That was an amazing battle. The next battle will be Izuku Midoriya versus Shoto Todoroki. Present Mike exclaimed. I glanced at Midoriya and he was acting pretty nervous. I then looked at Todoroki and he still has his usually calm expression. Do your best, Midoriya-kun and Todoroki-kun, I said to the two of them. Thanks, Such-san. Midoriya replied and Todoroki just nodded. They then walked to the waiting room. I was ecstatic as I'm about to watch one of the key battles in the UA Sports Festival arc. However, I doubt that they will have the same bonding moment since Todoroki won't be holding back and he will be using his flames as well. When they both got onto the field, the match started and Todoroki immediately used his ice to attack Midoriya. Just like in the anime, Midoriya used his quirk and destroyed the ice by flicking his fingers and breaking them in the process. This continued and Todoroki also started sending flames toward him, but it was also useless as Midoriya just disperses it with the gust caused by the force of his quirk. Midoriya was running out of options and he decided to do a final charge as he ran towards Todoroki at a fast speed with the help of his quirk. Todoroki started creating ice walls to block him but Midoriya quickly moved around them, or just simply busted through them. Seeing it was not working, Todoroki started boosting all his power into his flames, as he sent a beam of fire toward him. Midoriya raised his hand, activated One for All, and decided to go through the fire and strike Todoroki with the palm of his hand. Cementos realized that their attack might cause fatal injuries, and built up 5 cement walls between them. Unfortunately, it simply wasn't enough as Todoroki's flame and Midoriya's strength easily demolished them, and the two attacks met in the middle. Because of the sudden change in temperature, the air that has been cooled suddenly heated up at a fast speed, causing it to expand, creating a giant shock wave. Todoroki made an ice wall behind him to save himself from going out of bounds, but the same thing can't said for Midoriya as he was launched back and hit the wall of the stadium. Izuku Midoriya out of bounds. Shoto Todoroki wins. Cementos declared. Midoriya was quickly sent to the infirmary and Tadakori dragged himself off the field. He was still surprised by the strength shown by Izuku and if he didn't use his full power, he would have been the one to get defeated. When he returned to his seat, Kaede congratulated him and wished him luck. They were the only two remaining in the one-on-one battle and soon enough, they will clash and see who will reach first place. Shoto felt happy that he had gotten this far, but there was also a complicated expression on his face. He had seen how powerful Kaede was, he wasn't sure if he can even beat Katsuki, but Kaede managed to do it. All he was thinking of right now was, will I be able to win? Todoroki-kun, are you okay? A soft voice snapped him out of his thinking and he looked beside him. Kaede was next to Shoto and she looked at him with a worried expression. He was surprised by how close she was but he slowly nodded. I see. Then let's have a great battle, okay? Kaede still has some doubts but she quickly hides them and said in a cheerful tone, no matter what happens, let's still be friends. Hearing this, Shoto couldn't help but smile stiffly. His hand subconsciously reached out and Shoto wanted to pat her head. However, He froze when he remembered that Kaede was his classmate and not a young child, even no matter how much she acted like one. Now we will have our last battle of the day. Kaede Uchiha vs Shoto Todoroki. Present Mick's voice suddenly sounded through the speakers. Everyone was excited. They watched how both of them fight with such skills and power, and the audience couldn't contain themselves in their seats. Especially Itachi and Enji. Throughout the years, Itachi and Enji have basically become rivals. They compete whenever the opportunities arise, and now the opportunity has presented itself. Itachi was the one who trained Kaede while Enji was the one who trained Shoto. This battle will show who will be the better teacher, and they know that whoever wins, the winner will never let the loser live down this day. In simpler terms, whoever side wins get bragging right. Back at the class spectator seats, Kaede and Shoto were informed to go to the waiting room to prepare for the final match. Kaede POV. On my way to the waiting room, I heard a voice behind me. Hey, you stop. I turned around and saw Bakugo standing behind me, and there were bandages wrapped around his forehead. Remembering what I did, I felt a slight amount of guilt. Bakugo noticed me gazing at his forehead. He sulked and approached me with his hand in his pockets. He stared at me for a bit before finally breaking the silence. Am I strong? He asked. I instinctively let out a weird sound. I was surprised by his question, but I snapped out of my shock and smiled. Yes, Bakugo-kun, you're very strong, but try to be a bit nicer, okay? Bakugo clicked his teeth and snorted. I giggled, and it felt like I was talking to a little brat. Since you can only get so strong by yourself. He scowled and left. I watched his fading back and thought, I hope he learned his lesson. 10 minutes later, Kaede and Shoto were standing opposite each other. Good luck, Todoroki. Kaede wished Shoto good luck again. There was a small smile on his face before saying, Good luck to you too, he said. Kaede was surprised that Shoto smiled back, and she was glad that he showed another expression other than his usual cold one. In the distance, Fugaku and Itachi were already back awake, and they saw the interaction between Shoto and Kaede. However, they have to stop themselves from acting out as they glanced at Mikoto, who was giving them a devilish smile holding both her fists up. Back onto the field, Cementos had signaled the start of the battle. Immediately, Shoto sent a wave of ice. Kaede quickly did multiple hand signs, and she held her right hand as a high concentration of blue electricity formed in her palm, making the sounds of thousands of birds shrieking. Chidori! She screamed and shattered the ice with a chop of her right hand. With this first move, the final battle of the UA Sports Festival has started. Chapter 34. Kaede vs Shoto. I unleashed my Chidori and destroyed the ice coming toward me. Immediately, I dashed toward Todoroki and he defended himself with an ice wall. I felt my fist making contact with the cold barrier and it shattered upon impact. However, Todoroki was already waiting for me, and I was met with a face full of fire. I grunted and twisted my body in midair to dodge the trajectory of the flames. Unfortunately, Todoroki won't let me escape so easily and a pillar of ice burst out of the ground. The beam rushes at my location and I grabbed onto it before climbing to the top. Todoroki frowned when I nimbly landed on the ground. I punched the pillar and it cracked, making a loud crispy sound. The pillar began to tilt, and to Todoroki's horror, I grabbed the ice with my hand and turned the ice tower into a giant makeshift bat. Boom! I swung the bat widely, destroying the cement field with ease. Eventually, my weapon broke completely, and I tossed the remaining structure away with annoyance. Kagebunshin no Jutsu! I shouted and summoned 5 shadow clones. In unison, we charged at my opponents. Todoroki frowned and began to blast us with a combination of flames and ice. Thankfully, my Sharingan allows me to predict the trajectory of Todoroki's barrage and helps me escape some pretty close calls. The more our distance shorten, the more ferocious Todoroki's attack becomes, creating a massive glacier terrain. I felt my clones getting destroyed one by one, and eventually, one of Todoroki's ice poles struck me in the stomach. I fell to the ground and groaned. I took a deep breath and tried to not vomit out my lunch. I glanced up and immediately another ice tower was shot toward me and my eye twitched. At least let me stand up first. Rasengan! I shouted and a sphere of churka formed in my palm. I smashed the tower with my palm and I grunted from the force. The ice tower fought against my Rasengan and I grasped my wrist while gritting my teeth. I panted and felt my right arm feel numb. I grinned and felt the adrenaline rush pumping in my veins. Todoroki was smiling as well, and he seemed to be also enjoying the battle. Todoroki-kun, you're tired as well, right? I asked. He didn't respond, but his heavy breathing and slumped shoulder told me otherwise. Let's finish this with one last attack. Chidori. Electricity coated my hand and transformed into a shape of a blade. The air around Todoroki also began to increase in temperature, evaporating the ice that surrounds him. Therpavakid rushes towards Shoto with her Chidori. Instantly, Shoto creates a massive shockwave, blasting away everything in the vicinity. Debris of ice and rocks flew around, manifesting a deadly hurricane. Kaede slashed and destroyed all of the projectiles that came for her. Countless cuts and bruises grew on her body, but she ignored the pain and continued her charge. Shoto aimed the superheated blasted wave in Kaede's direction. Kaede covered her arm with churka and pointed her Chidori forward. With all her strength she slashed, and the heat wave split into two sides like Moses splitting the Red Sea. Boom! The explosion shook the stadium and littered the field with ashes and smoke. Shoto panted with exhaustion and fell onto his knees. He stared at the dense black fog with anticipation, hoping to see Kaede defeated. Unfortunately, that would be too easy. Kaede burst through the cloud of smoke and pounced. Shoto tried to stand, but Kaede kicked him in the stomach and he fell onto his back. Before Shoto realizes what was happening, Kaede pressed her knee on his chest and aimed her 2 fingers at his eyes. I win, Todoroki-kun. Kaede wheezed. Todoroki wanted to fight more, but he knew his body was already at its limit. He stared into Kaede's eyes and he suddenly not wanted to fight anymore. I surrender, Shoto said, and the crowd erupted into cheers. POV. I finally relaxed when Todoroki announced his defeat. Sat next to him and laughed. That was fun, Todoroki-kun. He smiled and nodded. We helped each other up and left the field. The UA Sports Festival has come to an end and the winner of this year is Kaede Uchiha. Present Mike shouted through his microphone, and the crowd cheered once again. 20 minutes later, all of the first years were standing in the middle of the stadium. The ground opened up, and a podium was elevated onto the ground. Standing on the podium were Todoroki, Bakugo, and I. Recovery Girl had healed all of our injuries, except for being exhausted. We're all fine. Bakugo and Midoriya were supposed to fight for 3rd place, but due to Midoriya's wounds, he's too tired to battle, and Bakugo automatically wins. Bakugo got very mad knowing about this, and just like in the show, he was being held down with chains and a muzzle was attached to his face. He was screaming, but his yells were turned to muffles as he struggled to break free. Third POV, as everyone was admiring the 3 winners while the reporters were taking pictures. All Might appeared and landed in front of the podium. He then pulled out 3 bronze, silver and gold medals as he walked toward them. First, he undid Katsuki's muzzle and was going to hang the medal onto his neck. However, Katsuki refused to receive the medal, and after a bit of struggle, he managed to hang the medal on his neck. All Might then hugged Katsuki before moving to Shoto and doing the same thing. When he got to Kaede, All Might congratulated her on how well she did and that he was very proud of her. He hung the medal on her neck and was about to hug her as well. However, in the corner of his eye, he saw 2 sets of bright red eyes spinning rapidly while glaring at him in the distance. X2. Because of the respectable silence, everyone heard the sound of 2 people getting knocked out. The bloodlust quickly disappeared. All Might froze and lightly sweated. He gave Kaede a light hug and let go as he faced the crowd of students. Everyone felt the 2 intense killing intents directed at All Might, well, everyone except the girls. Now every boy in school has to think twice before trying to make a move on Kaede. Key POV. When the sports festival ended, we all returned to class. I looked around the class and saw that Ida wasn't there. I got worried when I remembered that this was around the time when Ida's big brother got defeated by the hero killer Stain. I sighed knowing I won't be able to do anything and didn't know where he was in the first place. All I could do was try my best to persuade him to not go and find Stain. Aizawa-sensei told us that we got 2 days off, and when we return we will go through all our offers for internships from the pro heroes. I'm glad that we got 2 days off as today was very tiring. I decided to just relax for the next 2 days. Chapter 35 Hero Name and Internship. Key POV. The 2-day break has ended and today's the day when we will pick our hero's name and internship offers. I was pretty excited, however, the way to school was pretty nerve-wracking. Everywhere I go, I can see screens or electric billboards replaying the events of the UA Sports Festival. Mom, look, that's the pretty one Isan that won the sports event. Congratulations on winning, Uchiha-san. You did great out there. While I was walking, people pointed me out and congratulated my win. It was very embarrassing and I went to school with a red face. When I arrived at school, I spotted Ida. I heard what happened to his brother on the news and I was pretty worried about him. He has a stern expression as he put his things into his locker. Hey Ida-kun, I heard what happened. If you want to talk to somebody, please feel free to find me and I will help you the best I can, I said with worry. Good morning, Uchiha-san. Thanks for the suggestion, but I'm fine, he answered. Before I could say anything, he walked away. I went to our homeroom and sat down in my seat. I was still concerned for Ida and I tried to think of a way to help him. However, my thoughts were interrupted as Aizawa-sensei came into the classroom. Today you will be choosing which per-hero you will intern for, Aizawa-sensei said as he picked up a remote and pressed a button. A projector descends down from the ceiling. It turned on and our names appeared with the number of offers we all received. We all observed the board and were shocked. Beside my name it said that I got 9,220 offers. My jaw dropped as I looked at the board. My friends looked at me in awe and I have an awkward smile on my face. Wow, Kichan, you got so many offers. Mina shook my shoulder with admiration. However, before you choose, first you have to decide your hero names, Aizawa-sensei explained. As soon as the sentence left his mouth, the door opened and the pro-hero Midnight walked in. When she went in, the majority of the boys cheered and we girls just stared at them with disappointed looks. Midnight explained that our hero name will represent who we are in the future, and that we have to take this very seriously. She handed us a small board and a marker. Midnight then said that we will be presenting our names in class. Some people finished their names pretty fast. One of them was Mina. She excitedly walked up to the front and presented to the class. My name will be Alien Queen, she declared with pride. Just like Canon, that was shut down fast and she came back saddened. I patted her back to comfort her. Once Mina cheered up again, I went back to try and make up a hero name for myself. What's my hero's name? I pondered. Slowly more and more of my friends were being called up, and soon it would be my turn. I continued to rack my brain for inspiration before finally, I thought of something and eagerly wrote it down on the board. Uchiha, have you thought of a name yet? Midnight asked. I nodded and walked up to the front. I then present my hero's name to the class. I choose my hero name to be Maple, I said with an excited tone. /N. I thank Deedman13 for this name suggestion. Midnight nodded with understanding and my friend seems to approve of it as well. When I got back to my seats, it was Midoriya-kun's turn. He chooses Deku and he gave out his whole speech on why he chooses that name. I glanced at Ochako and she was smiling happily. Mina also noticed it as well, and she was glancing at Ochako mischievously. After we all presented our names, Midnight left and Aizawa-sensei continued to talk about the internship. Even if some of us didn't receive an internship, we can still work in one of the 40 agencies that accept students. Hearing this, some of my classmates became happy again with the fact that they still can work as an intern even if they didn't get chosen. Aizawa-sensei each handed us a piece of paper that contains the heroes that wanted to intern us. Well, a single paper for other people and 5 pages for me. I already decided on who to intern for. The answer was very simple. I wished to intern under my Onaikin, of course. Who wouldn't want to? Besides, I can tell he was pretty eager for me to intern in his agency, and if I didn't he will probably be depressed. I searched for his hero name. I flipped to the last few pages as the heroes were listed in alphabetical order. Eventually, I found my Onii-chan's hero name and I happily circled it. One day later, all of us were in the train station. My Onii-chan's agency was in this city, but I wanted to see my friends off because they will be going to other places for their internship. Also, I'm going to try my best to persuade Ida to not go through with his revenge plan. Currently, he has a cold expression on his face. I went to him with concern. Ida-kun, I said with a worried tone. Ochako and Midoriya also approached us. They have the same expression as me. I'm fine, don't worry, he reassured and smiled wryly. Even if he was smiling, we all know that he's bottling up his anger and hiding it from us. We heard his train was about to depart. Ida turned around and was about to leave. I quickly grabbed the sleeve of his blazer. "Ida-kun, please. For your Onii-chan's sake, don't go after the hero killer." His body shook hearing me talking about the hero killer. He turned back around and faced me. "I'm delighted to know that you care for me. But don't worry, Uchiha-chan, I'm really okay. If you say so." I muttered sadly. I know that if I push any further, I would do more harm than good. I let go of his sleeve and watched him slowly walk away. I clenched my fists in frustration. Midoriya and Ochako patted my shoulder, and they told me that everything will be all right. However, I can tell that even they were doubting their own words. I sighed. I just wish that now I can get to Ida in time before it's too late. Chapter 36, Start of my internship. Key POV. This should be the place, I muttered while looking at a big red building that's a couple of stories tall. At the front entrance there's a symbol of a black crow. A day has passed since everyone left to do their internships. They all have their internships outside of the city, so I'm the only one remaining. I currently wearing my school uniform while carrying my briefcase with my hero costume. I have been to Onii-chan's agency when I was little, however. Recently the location changed when more and more people started working for him. I haven't been to the newly built agency yet until now. I took a deep breath and enter. Inside there was a receptionist I don't recognize working at the front desk. I walked up to him and said, "Hello, I'm here for my hero internship." "Ah, you must be Uchiha-san's sister?" he asked. I nodded. "Yes, my name is Kaede Uchiha." I reached out my hand. He shook it and told me that Itachi-chan was waiting for me in his office upstairs. I thanked him and followed the instruction the receptionist gave me. I went up the elevator and went to the top floor. I navigated around the top floor before finally reaching a door at the end of the hallway. I knocked and I heard my Onii-chan's voice. "Come in." I entered and saw my Onii-chan filling out some documents at his desk. He gestured for me to sit in the lounge area by the door. After a few minutes of waiting, Onii-chan stopped, and he came and sat the opposite of me. "Welcome to my agency, Kaede. You excited about the internship?" he asked. I happily nodded. "However, we won't be going today. First I will teach you some office work that Pro Hero needed to do once you have an agency of your own, and in the afternoon, how about you and I have a spar?" I was at first slightly disappointed to not be able to go out and do hero things like patrolling, but my disappointment immediately vanished when I heard that I will be fighting Itachi Onii-chan today. He went back to his desk and grabbed some random documents. Itachi Onii-chan then taught me the basics of these documents, what they do, and how I should respond to them. It was more interesting than I expected, and I paid full attention to his lecture. Some time passed and we decided to end it for today. This was when the door of the office suddenly opened. A man with short unkempt hair, black eyes, and a broad nose entered with some papers. Is that Shursui?" I thought with disbelief. "These are the rest of the documents for today, Itachi," he explained. "Didn't I tell you to knock?" Itachi Onii-chan replied with a scowl. Shursui shrugged and put the small stack of papers on Onii-chan's desk. He turned around and his eyes widened when he saw me. "Impossible. Itachi has finally talked to a woman, and a beauty at that?" Shursui exclaimed. Bam! Instantly Onii-chan appeared in front of Shursui and punched him in the face, and Shursui got sent flying to the other side of the room. "What the hell was that for?" he complained while standing up as if nothing had happened. "She's my sister." Itachi Onii-chan looked at him with cold eyes. "What? Dad told me that you have a sister, but you never let me see her," he shouted. "Because you're a horrible influence, so I don't trust you being anywhere near her," Onii-chan replied. Hearing my Onii-chan's opinion of him, Shursui collapsed onto all four and a sad air surrounds him. Onin, who is he?" I asked while pointing at Shursui, who was shedding tears on the floor. Itachi Onii-chan face-bombed and sighed. "He's your cousin." Shursui immediately stood up with a wide grin and slapped his chest, forgetting the fact that he was just then crying on the floor. "I'm Shursui Uchiha. I've been working for this guy right here for a long time now," Shursui said while pointing at Itachi Onii-chan. "I'm Kaede Uchiha." I happily greeted him. "But wait, I used to visit Onii-chan's agency. How come I've never met you?" I uttered with wonder. Hearing this, Shursui seemed to be deep in thought before eventually. That's why sometimes you assign me tasks where you forced me to travel to places so far away. He screamed and stared at Oniai-chan with a look of betrayal. As I said, I don't want you anywhere near Kaede. Seems like today, it's my failure for forgetting to give you a project that will last a whole week. Itachi Oniai-chan retorted, and he gritted his teeth in frustration. But why I haven't heard of Shursue-kun in the first place even though I know most of my other relatives? I asked with confusion. Because he's not important enough to be mentioned, Oniai-chan casually stated with a calm expression. As if multiple arrows pierced Shursue-kun's heart, he stumbled back and grasped his chest with a pained expression. At this point I should really put my foot down, or else Shursue's going to die of emotional damage. That's so mean, Oniai-chan. You shouldn't treat families like that, I said while angrily staring at him. And Shursue-kun nodded along behind me. Itachi Oniai-chan's body trembled before he looked at the ground and muttered, "Sorry." Not to me but to Shursue-kun, I demanded. Oniai-chan froze like a statue before reluctantly looking at Shursue and saying, "Sorry." Since Itachi Oniai-chan apologized, I decided to change the topic. "By the way, Shursue-kun, what type of quirk do you have?" I asked. "Oh, me? Just like all Uchihas, I have the Sharingan and my other quirk was extreme speed," Shisuikin said proudly. /N. As I said in the past, if I utilize other Naruto characters, they may not have the chakra quirk. They will have an ability that's close to something they're famous for in the Naruto world. Wow, that's so cool, I said with sparkles in my eyes. I know, right? After all, my hero's name is Shursue the Body Flicker. He exclaimed. Sugoi. You seem to be a very powerful quirk. Aren't you strong enough to have your own hero agency? I mentioned. Well, about that. Shursue-kun chuckled while looking away from me. He doesn't want to handle the responsibilities of managing one. Itachi Oniai-chan, who went back to his desk, answered. Just because it's true you don't have to say it, Shursue-kun said and slumped his shoulders. Even if he's an adult, he's acting like a child. I muttered in my mind. We continued to ask each other questions until Itachi Oniai-chan finally stopped us, and together we went to get something to eat. When we finished our food, Itachi Oniai-chan brought me to the basement levels of his agency. Turns out there's a whole sparring field down there. The arena reminds me of the field from... What's that show called again? Pokemon? Yeah, Pokemon. Shursue also went with us as he was interested in watching the battle. He sat at the spectator seats as Oniai-chan and I went to the opposite end of the field. I was given a wooden version of my tanto, and Itachi Oniai-chan was holding a sword that looked just like the one he uses during his umbu time in the anime. Are you ready, Kaede? Itachi Oniai-chan asked. Ancient. I held my tanto in a reverse grip as both our Sharingan started spinning rapidly. I will be the referee of this match. Start on my mark. Shursue-kun stood up from the seats and shouted in a serious tone. Oniai-chan and I nodded at his words. 3, 2, 1, go. Chapter 37, Duel and Internship. As soon as Shursue gave us the signal, both of us immediately dashed toward each other with our blades drawn. A large sound was made as both blades collide and locked together. Itachi Oniai-chan was stronger than me, and he started to push me back with his sword. Knowing that sooner or later he will overpower me, I slightly tilted my blade to the side to get out of the lock and dodged before aiming my tanto at his waist. However, Oniai-chan easily parries my attack with minimum movement. Good thinking. It would have worked if your opponent was just some average day thug, Itachi Oniai-chan calmly remarked. He then slashed with his sword at an insane speed and I dashed backward. While in the air, I sent 2 lightning arrows at Oniai-chan, but he cuts them in half with a wave of his sword. As soon as I landed, he then body flickered in front of me and swung his blade vertically. I swerved to the left and punched his face. He blocked with his free arm, but my strength sent him back a few meters. Nice counter. Now let's step up a notch, Oni-chan said. I nodded and we engaged each other once more. Thanks to our chakra abilities, our strength and speed increased to an insane amount. Also because of our Sharingan, we can still see each other's moves at normal speed. But, to other people without the Sharingan, it just looked like we were swinging our arms wildly at an extreme pace. The only thing that indicates we were fighting was the sound made by our wooden weapons hitting each other. Even if looks like the two sides were in equal strength, in reality I was gradually losing. Oniai-chan's fighting skills were way superior to mine and the fact he has way more experience. After a few more exchanges, he managed to disarm me and flicked the wooden tanto into the air. Itachi Oniakan then instantly grabbed it and pressed both blades by my neck. But I caught my Oniai-chan off guard and instantly reached out and grasped both weapons. I then snapped them in half with my hands and sent him back with a kick. Itachi Oniai-chan was surprised by my actions and laughed. "I should have known that you will never give up no matter what," he exclaimed. I smiled and weaved a pattern of hand signs. Ryan. Reika Hidofuki no Jutsu. A continuous amount of lightning shot out of my palm. As soon as it made contact with Oniai-chan's body, he dispersed into many crows. I suddenly felt a presence behind me and I ducked as a fist flew above me. I turned around and did a leg sweep. Itachi Oniai-chan take hold of my leg mid-sweep and pinned me to the floor. "Chidori!" I shouted as blue lighting gathered in my right hand, making the shrieking sounds of thousands of birds. I pounced and aimed my Chidori at his chest. Knowing blocking that attack was not a smart choice, he quickly let go of my leg and jumped back. "You have grown strong, Kaede," he said with a small smile as he landed in the distance. "Thanks, Oniai-chan, but may I ask you to go serious now? It's very rude, you know." I pouted at him. All this time I realized that Itachi Oniai-chan was going easy on me, and I got a bit annoyed. "Are you sure?" he asked. I nodded and looked at him with a serious expression. Seeing that I really meant it, he immediately sent a fireball toward me. I was surprised by his sudden attack and I moved out of the way. Abruptly, dozens of crows started circling, trapping me in place. An arm appeared out of the flock of crows reaching for my head. I panicked and tried to block, but I felt my wrist being tightly grasped and I was pulled into the crows. I saw Oniai-chan holding me, but I don't have time to break free and felt pain in my stomach. He swung his arm that was holding onto me and slammed me onto the floor. Itachi Oniai-chan didn't use much strength, but it still hurts. "Ow," I said and lay there panting. "Sorry," he said with a guilty look. "It's okay, I'm the one that asked you to get serious." He stepped back and I slowly get back up while applying medical jutsu to heal the bruise. "You did very well. You just needed more experience," he summarized. I nodded at his explanation and Itachi Oniai-chan patted my head. "Wow, Kaede-chan, you were pretty good out there. You may even give me a run for my money." Shursui walked to us and said, "Thanks, Shursui-kun," I happily replied. Itachi Oniai-chan decided to call it early today, and we will start patrolling tomorrow. One day later, Kaede and Itachi were walking down the street wearing their hero costume. "Remember, Maple, be aware of your surroundings. Villain attacks can happen suddenly and without warnings." "Hi, Oniai-chan," Kaede happily replied. "While we're out here, we need to refer to each other by our hero names," Itachi said. "Hi, Red Kronyajan." Just like Itachi said, they heard someone yell, "Help, thief!" Itachi immediately body flickered towards the sound and within a few seconds, he came back while holding the thief in handcuffs. A police officer quickly came and Itachi handed the thief to the officer. The police thanked him and left with the criminal. "Sugoi!" Kaede exclaimed while looking at Itachi with stars in her eyes. "See, you have to be ready for anything," Itachi calmly lectured. They continued their patrol, but the rest of their walk was uneventful. Because of All Might and Itachi's presence in Mizutofu, the city they lived in was relatively safe. All of a sudden Itachi received a phone call. He frowned and it was Shursui who called him. "Shursui, is there something wrong?" Itachi said through the phone. As the call goes on, Itachi's expression worsened. "Keep Yovi, I understand, I will go there now and will meet you there," Itachi Oniai-chan said, and he hung up his phone. "Oniai-chan, is there a problem?" I asked worriedly. "Hosu was being attacked by villains," he said while scowling. I was stunned. If I remember correctly, I still got some time before the League of Villains attacked. However, it started way faster than canon. "We have to go," I said immediately. Oniai-chan looked at me with concern. He must be worrying that I may get myself hurt again. But seeing my determined face, he finally nodded and we started making our way there. It will take us some time to get to Hosu. In my mind, all I'm doing was praying that I can get there in time before it was too late. Chapter 38, Attack of Hosu. Oniai-chan and I finally arrived in Hosu. He told me that Shursui was already here before us. It was evening, but the darkness was being lightened up by the flames in the city. We heard an explosion and we immediately rushes towards the commotion. On the way there, the destruction of the city becomes more severe the closer we go. There were many people injured and Onii-chan and I stopped whenever there was someone in need. We increased our pace as we summoned many shadow clones to support everyone. Suddenly giant debris fell from the top of a building, and it was falling toward a family of 4. Ah! The 2 children in the family screamed in fear, and the parents tried to push them out of the way, sacrificing themselves. Fortunately, I reacted in time and I destroyed the debris with my strength. Are you okay? I asked with a soft tone. Thank you. The parents said, and they relaxed knowing that their family was safe. No problem, that's what a hero should do. I suggest you leave this area as it was getting more and more unstable. I replied. They nodded and like the rest, the family quickly evacuated. Onii-chan and I continued to make our way there. When we finally arrived, we were in shock. Endeavor and his sidekicks were fighting 3 Nomus. There were many other heroes defeated on the ground. The 3 Nomus just look as grotesque as the one I fought in USJ. There was one that have pale white skin, long arms and 4 eyes. One with black skin and lacking eyes. Lastly, there's one with light yellow skin and wings, and it seemed to be wearing some sort of breathing apparatus. /N. I will be referring to them as the yellow Nomu, white Nomu, and black Nomu to make it easier. Endeavor shot a beam of flame towards the white-skinned Nomu. The Nomu absorbed it and sent it straight back. Endeavor tanked the hit and the white Nomu opened its mouth and launched its long tongue towards him. All of a sudden, Shursui appeared right below the white Nomu and knee it right below the chin, causing its mouth to close shut and knocking it back. However, the black Nomu moved toward him and attacked Shursui with its fists. Shursui easily dodged. He spotted us and appeared beside us. The black Nomu chased after him, but Endeavor drove him back with his flames. Took you guys long enough, he said while slightly out of breath. What's the situation? Itachi Onii-chan asked. All the civilians have been evacuated away from this premises, but we're having a hard time taking these guys out. The black one has regeneration, and the white one can absorb attacks and send it back with a long sticky tongue, and despite its skinny body, it's very strong. Lastly, the yellow one just has wings. All of them have super strength as well. Shursui explained while he kept his focus on the 3 monsters. Onii-chan nodded and said, Tell Endeavor to fight the black one, Kaede and I will fight the white Nomu, and Endeavor's sidekicks will go after the yellow Nomu. Emmy! I exclaimed in surprise. Itachi Onii-chan hesitantly nodded. As much as I hate for you to get hurt, we need all the help we can get. Okay, I said and stared at my opponent. My last interaction with the Nomu was a nasty memory, but I need to face them eventually. So there's no point backing out now. I have to be strong. Shursui went to Endeavor to repeat Itachi Onii-chan's instruction. Ready? Onii-chan asked. Yes, I said with resolve. Therpiv immediately, Kaede and Itachi charged at the white Nomu. It swung its long arm. Kaede dodged to the left while Itachi to the right. Kaede countered by kicking the Nomu's stomach. The white Nomu got knocked back and Itachi was there to receive the Nomu as he punched its back and launched it into the air. Rasengan. X2 both Uchiha shouted as they jumped above the Nomu and strike their Rasengan into its stomach. The white Nomu got pummeled into the ground as cracks appeared. Unfortunately, its muscle augmentation quirk makes it more durable and enduring the attack. It opened its jaw and fired its long tongue at Kaede and its fists at Itachi. Both of them leapt backward, avoiding its attack. The Nomu slowly stood back up and roared in anger. It went berserk from the pain and the frustration of not landing its attack. It put its muscle augmentation quirk on overdrive, and the muscles in its body bulged and ran towards the 2 Uchihas at a way faster speed. It soon became a battle between a mad beast and 2 dancers. Itachi and Kaede gracefully darted around the Nomu as it attacked with wild ferocity. The white Nomu struck its fist at Kaede and she stepped to the side as lightning coated her hand. Yusaburo Kasugai no Jutsu. She hit the Nomu squared in the chest with her palm open. Electricity traveled into its body and paralyzed its muscles. Onii-chan now, she yelled. Itachi nodded. Susanoo. He shouted as a giant humanoid wrapped around his body, and the Susanoo smashed the Nomu with its fist. The white Nomu slowly stood back up, before finally falling onto the ground unconscious. Seeing that they have won, they observed the rest of the battlefield. Endeavor and Shursui have defeated the Black Nomu, as they discovered that it can't use its regeneration when the cells on the wound was burned. Unfortunately, the yellow Nomu flew away when it saw its companions lost. Kaede felt her phone vibrate in her back pocket and she took it out. She looked at the message and her eyes widened in shock. "Onit and I have to go, my friends are in danger," Kaede said with a panicked tone. "Kaede, wait." Immediately, Kaede's body flickered away. Itachi was about to chase after her, but he heard an ear-piercing screech. He turned around and saw that the yellow Nomu have returned. It shrieked and two elongated tendrils shot out of its hand and pierced into the two other Nomu's chests. The two names turned into mush as the tendrils absorbed them. The yellowed Nomu roared as it started to transform. The breathing apparatus broke and behind it were rows and rows of sharp teeth. The brain got bigger and its skull begins to cover the weak point and it grows sharp claws in its hand. Elongated spikes grow out of the back of its body. The Nomu also tripled in size and its skin turned into a military green color as it observed its surroundings. Itachi gritted his teeth in frustration. He needed to defeat this monster as fast as possible, so he can chase after Kaede. It roared as it dived at the heroes, pointing its claws at them. Cavalry ran through the city, jumping from roof to roof before reaching a dark alley. There I saw a horrifying scene. In the alleyway, there were Midoriya and Todoroki lying on the floor. Both of them have a knife stuck to their body. A small pool of blood was forming below them. Despite that, the two of them were still trying to get back up to fight. A pro hero was also unconscious in the far distance with multiple slash wounds. Lastly, a man wearing a combat suit with metal armor and various knives strapped all around his arms, legs, and chest. He also has a white eye mask and a bloody red scarf. He was standing on top of Itaku about to decapitate him with his katana. "Hero killer Stain," I thought to myself and threw two kunai towards him. Stain deflected the kunai and jumped back further into the dark alley. He readies his sword as he looked at me with annoyance. "More and more fakes keep getting in my way," he shouted in anger. "Are you guys alright?" I asked with a worried tone. The three of them, hearing my voice, weakly nodded. I sighed in relief that I got here in time. I summoned 4 shadow clones to tend to everyone's wounds. Knowing his character, Stain won't stop me from healing my friends. I unsheathed my trusty tanto and got into stance. "Your terror ends here," I said while keeping my guard up to the fullest. My 3-tomo Sharingan spins rapidly as I keep track of his every movement. He smirked at my declaration and the both of us sprinted at each other with our weapons drawn. Chapter 39 Hero Killer Stain. Stain hurled 2 throwing knives and in return, I launched 2 shurikens, and the projectiles collided with each other. He dashed towards me and swung his sword in a crescent pattern. I safely slid between his legs and attacked him from behind. Stain instantly turned around and blocked my strike. "Not bad for a fake," he muttered and picked up the pace. I observed his weapon. The edges of his katana were sharp, crude, and uneven. It looked damaged, however I know that it's anything but. The sword was specifically made to easily draw blood. He jumped back and threw more knives at me. "Watch out, Uchiha-chan," Midoriya screamed out. "Their wounds have been healed from my clones and they're resting in the distance." They wanted to help but my clones held them down. Knowing that have lost too much blood, I deflected the knives with ease and sparks formed in the air. "Nagaraisu no jutsu," I shouted and coated my tanto with electricity. I thrust my blade towards Stain's chest but he swept it away. However, the electricity traveled along his blade, and he groaned when Stain felt the pain of being electrocuted. Stain dropped his katana and rearmed himself with a combat knife strapped to his left thigh. The villain lunged and I slightly tilted my head to the side. I felt a sting sensation on my cheek and a small amount of my blood dripped onto Stain's knife. The villain smirked in confidence and slowly opened his mouth. However, I grasped his wrist and we struggled for the bloodied knife. I reached for the blade and clutched the sharp metal with my palm. With my strength I crushed the blade into pieces. Thankfully, the gloves on my costume protected my hand, other ways it would hurt a lot. Stain wasn't perturbed by my insane act and launched a kick. I blocked with both my arms and the force of his kick created distance between us. The villain picked up his dropped katana and pointed the blade at me. Suddenly, a pillar made of ice appeared behind him but Stain sliced it in half with ease. I turned around and saw Todoroki standing with shaky legs. His face was pale due to the blood loss. He raised his hand and sent more ice toward Stain. The hero killer clicked his teeth and destroyed Todoroki's fugile attacks and ignored the wounded boy. "I will handle this, Todoroki, go rest," I shouted. He shook his head. Before I could argue further, Stain arrived. I hurriedly parried his strike as we clashed once more. Todoroki used his flames and shot a small fireball, driving the hero killer away. He almost tripped from the dizziness due to the lack of energy, but he still won't back down. "Stop, you need to rest now," I pleaded. "I won't. Let my friend fight alone," he said while panting tiredly. Hearing his words, there was a small smile on my face. I'm delighted to know that's how he feels about me, but right now, Todoroki was barely conscious, and if uses any more of his quirk he will collapse. The hero killer makes his move as he slashes at me with his katana. I blocked with my tanto. There was an indent in his blade as he hooked my tanto and locked it in place. He twisted his arm and yanked my weapon out of my hand. I did a backflip, dodging his swing and kicking him in the face, knocking him back. I gritted my teeth. I only have my kunai left as a melee weapon of choice, however. His weapon has a longer reach than mine, and I will lose if I even get cut once. "Uchiha," Todoroki weakly called out to me. The ground in front of me was covered with a small patch of ice, and what appeared to be a handle emerged from it. I grabbed the handle and pulled. I manipulated the chakra into my hands, so I won't be disturbed by the cold temperature from the handle. Todoroki fell onto the floor from exhaustion. "Thanks, Todoroki-kun," I muttered and observed my new weapon. It was a beautiful katana made of ice. It was well balanced and light. The weapon reminded me of something you find in a fantasy game at the end of a Dugion or something. I nodded with satisfaction and glanced behind me. Ida and Midoriya was also slowly trying to stand, but they stopped when they heard my voice. "Sit down. As the class rep, I order you to rest. I will finish this." I hissed. They were about to argue, but a furious stare from me was enough for them to back off. I readied my weapon and lunged at Stain. I have used other weapons in the past, but I find my tanto to be the best. However, that became my weakness as I am not as skilled with other weapons. Thankfully, the longer range of my new sword managed to keep Stain at bay. I summoned 2 shadow clones who also held the same katana, and together we started putting pressure on the hero killer. As the fight continued, my clones and I finally started to drive Stain into a corner. "Stay out of my way," he shouted in rage and swung his katana in a wide semicircle. The 2 of my clones leaped backward, and I ducked under the blade. "Raitun! Reika Baruto no Jutsu!" The clones in the air shouted as they weaved hand signs and shot 2 small weak lighting bolts at the villain. Stain can't dodge as he was still recovering from his attack, and the lightning bolts hit him. He froze from the electric shock and instinctively lowered his sword. I stepped on the tip of his katana and pinned it to the ground and slashed at it. With the force of my foot and blade, the katana snapped in half. I strike him in the chest with the flat of my palm and he stumbled backward. My clones push in and they cuts his thigh and he fell onto his knees. Before Stain could do anything, the 3 of us each pressed our blades on his neck in the shape of a triangle. Seeing there was no escape, the hero killer reluctantly raised his hand in surrender, and one of my clones tied his hands and legs with a rope I found in the alley while the other clone disarms every hidden weapon he kept on himself. I then lightly karate chopped him in the back of the neck just to be safe. Stain's eyes rolled upward into his head and fainted. "Are you guys okay?" I asked Midoriya, Ida, and the hero who I now realized was the pro-hero native. I looked back at Todoroki. He had fallen unconscious from exhaustion and I was pretty worried about him. I knelt down and put his head on my lap. He had fallen pretty hard, so I'm checking whether he sustained any head injuries. Thankfully, he only got a small cut on his cheek from the fall and I easily healed it. Hopefully, Stain doesn't wake up now as my chakra was running low. After healing Todoroki, I generate a tiny static shock to wake him up. Vishoto was suddenly jolted awake. He felt that he was laying on something soft and comfortable. His sleepiness kicks in and he doesn't want to open his eyes and snuggled deeper into what he assumes to be a pillow. "Hey Todoroki-kun, it's time to wake up now." He heard a soft voice calling out to him. He frowned and slowly opened his eyes. There was a surprised expression on his face as he saw Kaede's face looking down at him. Tenya coughed lightly into his hand while Izuku looked away flustered. It took Shoto a bit to process what was happening. His face immediately went red when he found out that he was resting on Kaede's lap, and what's he trying to snuggle into was her stomach. He quickly got up with an embarrassed expression. "You okay?" Kaede asked, and Shoto nodded in response. He was still pretty tired, so Tenya and Izuku have to support him. In the end, Kaede and the rest left the alleyway. They were greeted by many pro-heroes including Endeavor, Red Crow, and Gran Torino. They defeated the last Nomu, and Itachi brought everyone here as he tracked Kaede to this location. The police and reporters were also there, and they were shocked to see the pro-hero native holding the infamous hero killer in binds. Kaede then explained to them what happened and apologized to Itachi for her behavior. Itachi flicked her forehead and scolded Kaede. However, the scolding wasn't too harsh because without her, more people would have died that night. Endeavor thanked her as well for saving his son, as the police were about to take Stain away. The hero killer woke up and unleashed his bloodlust on full blast. Everyone was surprised by his intense bloodlust, and some people started shaking in fear. Keyword some. Thud. Instantly, Kaede punched Stain in the back of the head, knocking him out once more. They all winced at the sound, and there was a minuscule amount of pity for Stain, and a large swollen bump formed on his head. The one who pitied Stain the most was Itachi, as he was very familiar with that pain. Kaede's too similar to Mother, he thought, and he subconsciously rubbed the top of his head. The police quickly took Stain away, and they told Kaede to follow them. Itachi went with them as well. They were brought to a room, and the police chief officer told Kaede the laws she have broken by using her quirks in public. However, the charges were immediately dropped because by using her quirks, Kaede saved people's lives and put a very dangerous criminal in prison. The police chief told her that to protect her from the law, Itachi will be known as the one who defeated Stain. Kaede happily agrees. As long as she can save her friends, she doesn't need rewards. One day later, Shoto, Izuku, and Tenya were resting in the hospital beds. Even if Kaede healed their injuries, they still needed to visit the hospital to check if there were any internal injuries. Luckily, they were healthy and they should be able to leave this afternoon. Key POV. I was relieved that I didn't get in trouble for defeating Stain. The next morning I went to visit my friends who were resting in the hospital. I opened the door to their room and see them sitting up wearing hospital gowns. "Hi guys. Are you all okay?" I asked. They nodded, but there was a remorseful look on their face. "What's wrong?" I said with a worried tone. It was Ida who responded. "We were weak, and because of us you have to face the hero killer alone while we're a burden," he said, and he clenched his fists. The other two agreed to Ida's words. "But you guys never gave up, right? Every hero in this world has at least lost one fight in their lives. That's why we have to get stronger to make sure that will never happen again, and to protect the ones we care about," I replied while giving them a bright smile. Their eyes widened at my answers, and the three of them thanked me for saving them. I spent some time talking to them until the chief of police, Manuel, Gran Torino, and Endeavor entered. I left the room letting them have their private conversation. I leave the hospital in a happy mood, knowing that I have prevented the worst outcome possible. Third POV. By the end of this incident, it was revealed to the public that Itachi was the one who defeated Stain. Thankfully, Kaede knocked out Stain early and the reporters didn't hear his speech. This chain reaction has been beneficial as most villains didn't get inspired by Stain's words. However, that doesn't mean they're gone. Chapter 40 Rescue Training Race. A few days later. After the hero killer incident, I went back to my normal internship with Itachi Oni-chan. I told him about my weakness of lacking experience in other weapons, and he agreed to help me fix that problem. For the rest of the week, Itachi Oni-chan and I will spend the entire afternoon training with different weapons. With the help of Sharingan, I managed to copy off his techniques. However, just because I know how to do it doesn't mean I can. Thankfully, by the end of my internship, I learned some basic skills in using many weapons like the katana, naginata, kuzurigama, and even a war fan. But the one I mainly trained with was a katana. It's easier for me to train with it as it was the most simple way of describing katana was that it's like a tanto but longer. Itachi Oni-chan told me to continue practicing every day. I hugged and thanked him for the fun time I have during the internship. Also, much to my Oni-chan's reluctance, I said goodbye to Shursui and gave him a hug as well. He gave Itachi Oni-chan a smug smile, but it quickly vanished when Oni-chan gave him a death stare. and he quickly ran away. School started once again. I greeted Ochako and Mina, and we talked about the time we spent in our internship. During our talk, more and more of my friends arrived in the classroom, and they shared their experiences of interning as well. Aizawa-sensei eventually showed up and ended our talk. He told us that this morning we would be having a rescue training race. When he said that, All Might entered with his wide signature grin. He instructed us to change into our hero costumes and meet him at Ground Gamma. When we finished changing, All Might told us that in this rescue training, we will race on who's the first one to rescue him. All Might explained that he will be hiding in the field, and at the start of the race he will yell loudly. We have to locate him, and whoever touches him first wins. We can't attack each other with our quirks. Seems simple enough, I thought. All Might then started randomly grouping us into a team of 5. I got into a team with Midoriya, Ida, Mina, Zero, and me. We're the first one up, and we went to the starting position as All Might went to hide within Ground Gamma. We waited for 5 minutes and we finally heard a loud voice. "Help me, I'm here." Immediately, all 5 of us started charging toward the location where we heard the voice. Ground Gamma was an industrial site consisting of factories with pipes. The place was very compact and it will be difficult to traverse smoothly. Each of us was finding ways to deal with that problem. Zero was using his tape to swing around the pipes. Mina used her acid quirk to slide around the floor, and Ida followed suit with his boosters. It was easier for me since I can just simply jump from pipe to pipe at a fast speed. I won't trip and fall by applying chakra to my feet. I looked behind me and see that Midoriya hasn't moved yet. Suddenly, a faint green light surrounds his body. He leaped and started to close his distance between us. Everyone was surprised by Midoriya's newfound power. I was less shocked, but it's still astonishing that he's decently fast now with just 5% of the full cowling. However, all 4 of us decided to pick up the pace and Midoriya started falling behind. The further we go, the more and more pipes started appearing on the field. I still easily jumped over them, but the same thing can't be said about the rest, and they have to take their time to maneuver around them. Before you know it, I was the one in lead and I decided to go even faster. I turned around and saw my friends far behind me, eventually finding All Might, and tapped him on the shoulder. "I win," I said with a smile. "Well done, young Uchiha," All Might said and gave me a thumbs up. We waited for a bit and the others finally arrived. The 4 of them have a defeated look. "Don't be sad, guys. You tried your best." I tried to cheer them up. My friends sighed in frustration, but I can see a faint trace of a smile. After Kaede's race, the rest of the class have their turns as well. A few of them triumphed and won, and the majority were defeated. However, in the end, they all learned a new weakness from their quirk, and they will thrive to overcome it. In the boys' locker room, Izuku was reflecting on the match and trying to figure out why he lost. He was happy that he can now fully utilize 5% of full cowling, but that's still not enough to be better than the class. While he was contemplating, Denki patted his shoulder. "Hey Midoriya-san, come here," he said and ripped off a poster on the wall. Behind the poster was a small hole just big enough to see the other side with your eye. "My good friend Mineta-san told me about this," he exclaimed. This caught the attention of the other guys and they asked what that hole was. "That hole leads to the girls' locker room," he whispered. Everyone was shocked at what they heard. "Stop it, Kaminari-san, that's a criminal act," Tenya said loudly. Before Tenya can object further, Hanta used his tape to tie him up and Denki knocked him out with his electricity. Other boys like Eijiro, Kirishima, and Rikoto Sato gathered around Denki as well, interested in what he was saying, while the smarter ones like Shoto and Katsuki moved further away from them. While at the girls' locker room, "What's all that ruckus?" Kyoka muttered and she stuck her headphone jack into the wall. Kaede and the others waited for Kyoka, but her face slowly turns red and there was a disgusted expression on her face. "What's happening on the other side?" Chako asked. "The men are trying." Kyoka said, and she pointed at a small hole that was barely noticeable. She then repeated what the other side was saying. When the girls heard what the boys think of their bodies, they subconsciously covered them with their hands and their face turns really ugly. There was a smile on Kaede's face, however, that smile never reached her eyes and there were multiple tick marks formed on her forehead. "Jiro-chan, please move out of the way, okay?" Kaede said with a soft tone, but the girls can hear the anger behind it. Back to boys' locker room. Denki has drool hanging off the side of his mouth as he imagined what he will see. He excitedly peeped into the hole as Tenya desperately struggled through his binds. The other guys with Denki also have a slight blush while the smarter ones went all the way to the other end of the locker room. Suddenly a small hand burst through the wall with great strength and grabbed Denki by the neck as it lifted him up in the air. Era, so you boys are up to no good? Keith's voice sounded from the other side. All the boys almost wet themselves. Tenya stopped struggling and he looked at the scene with a petrified expression. Shoto and Katsuki were sweating. Even Kastuki knows that right now it was okay to back off. Whose idea was it? Keith asked through the now bigger hole. Immediately the rest of the boys pointed at Denki, who was still suffocating in the air. Keith immediately pulled her hand back and Denki's face smashed into the concrete wall. He fell onto the floor like a doll with its strings cut. They can see the force of it as cracks appeared on the wall. The boys were shaking in fear as Keith slowly retracted her hand, and Momo covered the hole with her quirk. The girls went back to changing like nothing happened while the boys were too scared to move. Back in the classroom. Aizawa. May someone tell me why the wall of the locker room was destroyed? It must be something wrong with the architecture, Keith responded. The rest of the guys quickly nodded and they were traumatized. They glanced at the empty seat of Denki Kaminari and sent prayers his way. He hasn't returned from the infirmary yet from the damage. That's the end of this tale for now. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in part 3. Peace.